tripping, now I'm blue. Mega Man, I can't win for losing, cause I got too many haters, man. Used to be the paper boy, grew up now I'm Mega Man. Player 1, player 2, show your ass what players do. Up, down, left, right, hit on with a strong attack. Yeah, I smoke the strongest pack. Tell me what is wrong with that. More coins in the laundromat, you can't help but honor that. Jam man, Mega Man, more games than the Sega man. All I smoke is chronic, run my coins just like I'm Sonic. From the hood, I speak Ebonics. That and economics, shorty, we can link like Zelda. That broke, then you a failure. Stack your money up like Tetris. I don't know what else to tell you. Over here, everybody got a gun. My life is golden now. You wanna know why niggas die? Nigga, I just told you why. I told the bitch we need to take a break, cause she a space invader. Niggas do not know the game, why? Cause they player haters. I'm a boss jam, man. I call me Dr. Egg, man. My money stretched like jogging pants, rubber bands and headbands. Hopped up out that water, niggas trying to sink my battleship. Because they bitch been bust open like a bag of chips. NBA jam, man. Bitch, I'm ballin'. Just learned a new move, I just don't know what to call it, man. I swear I lost my man, I had to snap back to reality. I ain't sparing nobody, finish a fatality. Bitch, start tripping, now I'm blue. Mega Man, I can't win for losing, cause I got too many haters, man. Used to be the paper boy, grew up now I'm Mega Man. Player 1, player 2, show your ass what players do. Up, down, left, right, hit on with a strong attack. Yeah, I smoke the strongest pack. Tell me what is wrong with that. More coins in the laundromat, you can't help but honor that. Jam man, Mega Man, more games than the Sega man. Jam man, Mega Man, more games than the Sega man. I am the great Saiyan man. You better stop playing, man. This game could be difficult. Depends on how you play it.
Contributor appreciation, welcome to the Soapbox. And we have Mrs. Thomas joining us today. What's happening?
Not a thing. Somebody said 5 seconds to glory.
5 seconds to glory is right. I hope you guys are doing all right today. We had a banging show at the station today. And we're going to follow that up with another banging show of the Soapbox. And by the way, there's a debate that's taking place tonight that I do think I'm probably going to end up covering. So this is going to be a long day, but it should be a good one.
What time is the debate?
8 o'clock, I believe. Yeah, so the debate comes on at 8. So I'm going to try to cover it. I'm going to try to do the thing where it's like the little window and the big window, so it doesn't necessarily trespass on it doesn't necessarily trespass on us doing or getting the channel caught into some nonsense. So several shows or several topics for today, all of which are apropos to what is taking place in the current race. So we're going to go through the questions because the questions actually lead us into really good places in regards to the topics that we're going to cover for today. But first, I'll let you give your spiel.
Can I get some volume? Some microphone shareage?
Oh, they can hear you. I promise. Yeah. Come on.
Okay.
But go ahead, give your spiel.
I'm going to get closer to you, babe. Don't be alarmed.
What's contributor appreciation?
So it is Tuesday, February 25th. Usually we do contributor appreciation on Sundays. Every now and then we switch the day to one day during the week. But essentially this is a weekly show where Jamal takes the time out to give thanks and use your information to fuel today's show. And so we put a post on the Patreon platform and ask patrons to let us know what they want to talk about or what they want to hear Jamal talk about on today's show. And we use that content to fuel today's show. If you are not familiar with what Patreon is, if you are enjoying the content of a creator, then you commit to a monetary donation once a month, $5, $10, $2, $1, whatever it is, it helps. But it's a monthly contribution to show your support of the channel. And that is where we put the topic suggestion request. If you're not getting monetarily, still thank you. The show is for you as well.
And you can send emails,
if you are here and you're not contributing monetarily, make sure that you give it a thumbs up. And even if you are contributing monetarily, but give the video a thumbs up if you enjoy it. Make sure that you are subscribed and hit the bell notification icon, even though recently Google has been screwing us and not giving notifications because there have been quite a lot of videos that come that I don't get notifications for. And so keep in mind that his new show with Bob Schlehuber.
That's it. Nailed it on the first go. You go.
Weekdays, Monday through Friday. That's the same time every single day. Weekdays, 12 p.m. Eastern to 2 p.m. Eastern. So even if you don't get a notification, tune in because that show will be here. As often as we can, give you guys a little bit of heads up for when we're going to do contributor appreciation and any other show, then we usually do that as well. So tune in for that and keep an eye out for what else is going on. Also, there are a couple of emails on the Patreon platform with people giving their topic suggestions. That's great. But if you guys have something where you're trying to contact Jamal a little faster, then before we get to it in a contributor appreciation show, please email him because Patreon platform is usually checked like once a week to prep for contributor appreciation. And so we may miss some of those. So just a heads up, nobody's getting ignored, but it's not the usual means of communication. So thank you everyone who supported. We do have some new Patreons. So thank you for that. And thank you everybody that's here and watching and giving super chats and Streamlabs and PayPals. And if you're subscribed and sharing the good word. Oh, that sounds like the Bible.
That's accurate.
Sharing the good word. Why do I feel short?
I don't know. Well, you lowered your chair down. That's probably why. We have to start here. I was tripping out about this. And to some degree, I even feel bad laughing about this. And if we weren't in a political campaign, I might feel bad about laughing at this. Look, senile people should not be made fun of. Just as a rule. Unless that senile person is running for office.
Caveat.
In which case, that person is fair game. Especially if that senile person is also a flagrant liar. Joe Biden come on down. Joe Biden, come on down. So, as you know, Joe Biden has been going out there making various comments about how he was part of the civil rights movement. Take a listen to this. Take a listen to this. Now, I've argued that Joe Biden's wife doesn't love him because if his wife loved him, she wouldn't have him out there doing this. My wife wouldn't have me out there looking crazy like this. But first, let's go to liar Joe Biden.
In the civil rights movement, we have the 8th largest black population in America. Most people don't know that. And I'd go to 8 o'clock Mass, then I'd go to Reverend Herring's church where we'd meet in order to organize and figure where we were going to go, whether we were going to desegregate the Rialto movie theater or what we were going to do. I got my education for real in the black church. And that's not hyperbole, it's a fact.
Ultimately, Joe Biden is using black people as props, and he's using the civil rights movement. I have great qualms with this. Using the civil rights movement, saying that he was a part of this particular movement to con black people into giving him their support. This is the truth, though. This is also the same Joe Biden. This is not me picking on him. This is me just clarifying and fact-checking liar, flagrant liar that was not part of the civil rights movement. By his own words, Joe Biden.
60s, I was, in fact, very concerned about the civil rights movement. I was not an activist. I worked at an all-black swimming pool in the east side of Wilmington, Delaware. I was involved. In what they were thinking, what they were feeling. I was involved, but I was not out marching. I was not down in Selma. I was not anywhere else. I was a suburbanite kid who got a dose of exposure to what was happening to black Americans when I'm in my own city.
That's the truth. That's the reality of it. Joe Biden's own words. What he means when he said he was a part of the civil rights movement, he was just alive at the time.
He said he was there with them in feeling.
In feeling.
Thought.
He was alive. He was there. It was on the news.
He was relating to their feelings, babe, so he was part of it.
Joe Biden was on stage looking black people in the face saying that he was marching in order to take the movie theater, to desegregate the movie theater.
He was there in
spirit.
Thought.
He was there in spirit with the other black
Thoughts
people who
and
were out there doing
prayers were
it.
with the people who were marching.
Now, this was the guy that was supposed to hold back the night. This was the guy that was supposed to stop Sanders. Joe Biden is out here now saying this. He has a new lie that he's peddling to various people. This lie was so egregious that the New York Times even calls bullshit on this particular lie. It wrote an article about it.
Barack Obama the presidency, and I have a simple proposition here. I'm here.
Come on, Joe. Come on, Joe. What's the simple proposition? I have to say, Joe Biden is a fundamentally different political character as he was even back in 2008. This is sad.
To ask you for your help. Where I come from, you don't get far unless you ask. My name's Joe Biden. I'm a Democratic candidate for the United States Senate. Look me over. If you like what you see, help out. If not, vote for the other guy. Give me a look, though, okay? That's all I've really got to say to you.
Now, this was the wrong video. I wanted to play the video with Joe Biden. I inverted the order of these videos. So let me go to the actual video I wanted to play first. This is Joe Biden claiming he was arrested in South Africa while he was trying to go and see Nelson Mandela. And again, even the New York Times claims bullshit on this.
This day, 30 years ago, Nelson Mandela walked out of prison and entered into discussions about apartheid. I had the great honor of meeting him. I had the great honor of being arrested with our UN ambassador on the streets of Soweto trying to get to see him on Robbins Island.
This lie is so egregious. This is so egregious. He is not content to use black people as props just domestically. He needs to go internationally to Nelson Mandela. Africans in a different country. No, that ain't right. And it's an outright flagrant lie. Joe Biden on stage is having difficulties. Now, it is possible. It is possible that Joe Biden actually believes he was arrested in South Africa. I've demonstrated to you that Joe Biden is a flagrant liar, so it's possible he's lying, but it's also possible Joe Biden is just senile and he doesn't entirely know what is going on. Listen to Joe Biden at another speech. Listen to what he says.
Ones that sent Barack Obama the presidency.
Now, listen carefully to what comes next. Listen to what Joe Biden is going to say as his closing pitch to people to get them to vote for him. Go ahead, Joe.
And I have a simple proposition here. I'm here to ask you for your help. Where I come from, you don't get far unless you ask. My name's Joe Biden. I'm a Democratic candidate for the United States Senate. Look me over. If you like what you see, help out. If not, vote for the other Biden. Give me a look, though, okay?
I'm Joe Biden. I'm running for the United States Senate. And if you don't want to vote for me, give me a look over, or you can vote for the other Biden. But give me a look, though. That's so bad. I'm running for the Senate. Give me a look over. Now, Joe Biden believes that the black vote.
The Senate?
He said the Senate, and
Say
he
that
said,
again? I missed
or
the Senate part.
you can vote for the other Biden. You didn't hear that? Listen to him again. Listen to him
It was
again.
such a fuck fest, and it's hard to listen to him because it's.
Listen to what he said. Listen to what he's saying.
From, you don't get far unless you ask. My name's Joe Biden. I'm a Democratic candidate for the United States Senate. Look me over. If you like what you see, help out. If not, vote for the other Biden. Give me a look.
He said, I'll vote for the other Biden. Now, again.
Wait. Is
I would
this
have-
wait. Is this an old video?
No, this is recent. This is a
this
recent
when he
video
was
in
running
South
for Senate?
Carolina. No, this is first in the South, dinner in South Carolina, where he just said that. Sundowning Biden. Now, again.
The sun is set. It is
Sun-
done.
sunset
It is
Biden.
darkness there. There is no light
No.
whatsoever. That
Again,
is
you
terrible.
don't hit a man.
Wait,
when
did
the
he
man is
correct
that difficult.
himself?
You heard him. That was the time. That was a phrase. So here's the thing. Joe Biden tends to believe that the African American vote is intrinsically embedded in his DNA. He's been running around like striding with the black vote as if that's his firewall. I have the black vote. I have the black vote. That's the thing that's going to help me win this particular primary. And even South Carolina, he went immediately from his scorching loss in New Hampshire to South Carolina with the thought that South Carolina is going to be his firewall. That's going to be where I make my last stand. Joe Biden knows that his political career is entirely on the line. And he is standing there. He's just holding a sword and shield. Joe Biden has a problem, though. With Bernie Sanders taking Nevada in such massive, scorching numbers, what did I say? When Sanders takes Nevada in big numbers, he is going to go into Nevada with a head of steam. I've said that for at least several weeks. I also said that Joe Biden is going to lose South Carolina. This channel, has also said that the black vote, a lot of it has to do with who keeps the monsters at bay, meaning it wasn't tethered to Joe Biden like it was sold to his hide or something. It had everything to do with Joe Biden and the notion of electability. Who keeps the monsters at bay? And the moment that it becomes clear or possible that Joe Biden can't potentially keep the monsters at bay, saying stuff like that, Joe Biden can't keep the monsters at bay. The moment that that becomes clear and the moment that Sanders becomes more electable, the black vote will move to Sanders. It is not an issue of we just love Joe Biden. It's more of an issue of we just think Joe Biden has the best chance of winning. When that trend changes, again, this channel infinitely loves trends. When that trend changes, things also change in the poll. Now, Joe Biden was winning South Carolina by like 30 points at one point. Joe Biden was having the black vote by like 20 points or more. For the first time, take a look at this. This is, I have a lot of polls up, so hold on. One
There's
second.
a lot of windows
All right.
up.
So, in California, Sanders takes the black vote by nearly 10. This is California. Reuters, Sanders, 26, Bloomberg 15, Biden 15. But what's more interesting, in that Reuters poll, if I can find it, in that Reuters poll, Sanders, for the first time, takes the black vote. Now, and so that last poll that we saw, come on, where is it? I have so many polls up. I apologize. I try to go
You want me to
through.
read some super chats while you do that? While you try to find it?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so the first one is, you might have to come back to it, but first super chat of the show. Thank you comes from Franklin Jimenez. I'm going to mispronounce that, but I apologize. He says, "You're the most manic progressive I watch, and honestly, I respect your grind and thank you. Also, bring up Nelson Mandela's relationship with Castro."
Oh, I am.
Okay.
I have the video. I actually have that video up. Yes. You got another?
I do. Uncle Brother keeps making me say hashtag yes. But he says he missed the notification too. We've heard that a lot. I haven't gotten them at all. I haven't gotten them for the midday show. I haven't gotten the one for this one. So I would say to make sure you're subscribed and hit the bell notification icon. Maybe we'll get them sometimes.
All right. Let me go back to my main point. All right. So Joe Biden, like I said, the black vote had a lot to do with who keeps the monsters at bay. So this is Morning Consult. Morning Consult keeps track of all of these, the polling, and they have a huge number of people participating in the polls. Sanders, before Nevada, was at 28%. After Nevada, 32%, meaning he surged that much more. How's that ceiling looking? Bloomberg, before Nevada, was 20%. After Nevada, 19%. Listen to what they say, though. At the same time, a separate Morning Consult poll, found 34% of said Sanders has the best chance of beating Trump, up 5 points. That's the electability argument. Post, New Hampshire, and 11 points higher, who identified Bloomberg as the electable candidate. Morning Consult tracking poll also finds that Sanders leading the field among black voters for the first time as the race moves to South Carolina, the second successive state with a significant black population a former Joe Biden campaign views as a firewall. 33% of black Democrat primary voters said they're backing Sanders compared to 29% who said Biden within the subsample's 4-point average. Now, keep in mind, right here, this is not a quirk. 34% said Sanders has the best chance beating Trump, up 5 points post New Hampshire. What is that? That's the argument for electability. And the moment that the electability argument went up for Sanders and went down for Biden, what happened? The black vote also changed. Who told you that the black vote is about who keep the monsters at bay? Me, because I grew up in a black family, totally understanding that there was no second choice. The only choice that was on that ballot was Democrat. You walked in, you voted D. You didn't even care who that Democrat was. What was the most important thing is that he keep the monsters at bay and don't let the Republicans in. Your dad, perfect example. Her dad and I, all of us were having a conversation about politics. And I was making the point about the problems with Democrats. He'd agree with me. He said, quote, "Yeah, but you can't vote for a Republican because you can't let a Republican get in office." This is just understood. Other groups may not fully entirely get this because when they go and vote, they vote for multiple parties. But African Americans, almost in our DNA, understands that the creatures that were in those parties that was against us, just based on the color of our skin, went to the other party. As such, from a familial thing, who keep the monsters at bay. Now the catch is, that's not entirely true for the younger generation. It's slightly different. But if you're talking about the majority, that's what the number is. So in Reuters, or Morning Consult poll, we have Sanders taking the black vote for the first time. In Reuters, we have Sanders taking the black vote for the first time. 26% for Sanders, 23% for one Joe Biden. That is a sea change. In the NBC News poll, right here, Biden, 31% of blacks support Biden, while 29% support Sanders. That means that the trend that was keeping Joe Biden alive for all of this time in this particular race, the black vote, has just fell apart. What does that mean for Joe Biden in South Carolina? You tell me. My argument is that Joe Biden loses South Carolina. And when Joe Biden loses South Carolina, he may limp to Georgia. I don't know why, but his political career at this point is over. And his wife, that does not love him, would at the very least give him popcorn or something. I mean, ultimately, his last stand is South Carolina. He has done absolutely horrendous in these last few elections. In Nevada, he did pretty decent. But in the other two, horribly. People of color especially blacks, was his thing. Sanders is taking the Hispanic vote by margin. To put this in perspective, listen to this, in the Nevada caucus. Sanders took 51% of the Hispanic vote. You can combine everybody else, they wouldn't catch him.
And he took what percent?
51%.
Okay.
Among the liberal vote, he took 52%.
Can we show the poll?
Yeah, this is the exit polling from the event. Exit polls, whites, Sanders, 28%. Non-white, Sanders, 44%. Among Hispanics, 51%. Among liberal voters, 52%. Even moderate voters. I don't know if I have the New York Times article up, but the New York Times article goes into this notion that even moderate voters, Sanders, for the first time, was able to narrowly beat Biden and the other moderates in the race. He took the number for voters under 40 and the number for voters over 40. He took union members. He took non-union members. Like, it's hard to get across how he has been dominating this race, and the coalition he has been able to put together is utterly phenomenal. 18 to 45, Sanders takes 60%. 18 to 45, he takes 60%. 45 and older, he takes 20%, tying and drawing even with Joe Biden.
You know what I said?
Who stops him?
Oh.
Honestly, who stops him? Now that gets into the next question that the person asked, because at this point he's trying to reach critical mass. There's a debate tonight. Bloomberg has unleashed. Elizabeth Warren and Pete Buttigieg is arguing that Sanders can't bring a broad coalition. What the hell are you talking about? Who are you talking about can't bring a broad coalition? He is bringing together all of these groups without alienating the other groups. Bless you. So, and Biden, of course, is falling apart, making the argument about South Africa. Bloomberg has decided to drop his money into an all-out assault
against
on
Sanders.
Sanders. Yes.
See that.
I mean, he had all of these Twitter stuff on Twitter and whatnot. Multiple people associated with him have been kicked off of Twitter for malicious behavior. I mean, utterly disgusting behavior. And now he's going to use all those billions. He has spent $500 million. $500 fucking million. Why? To buy the race. And that's not even in billions. Over the last several years, he's been dumping it to the Democratic Party to buy the machinery of the Democratic Party. And Bloomberg, who is not even running in South Carolina because he was trying to give Joe Biden a chance to show something that he could win it. But now he's going to start running into other races, dropping his money into Super Tuesday states. It's utterly ghastly. And they have the balls to sell everybody else to get out the race. You understand? Go into Superdelegates question first. Let's bring in the questions that
let's get to
some of our subscribers had, because our subscribers are hitting on something that is accurate and correct.
All right, so we actually had 2 Superdelegate questions. The first one was from Guy Citron. Says, what's the best way to discredit the faith in superdelegates before it's too late?
And what's the second one? I think the second one was the DNC.
Can you speak on the DNC? This is from Jared Watson. He said, can you speak on the DNC being public enemy number 1 when it comes to voter suppression by using superdelegates?
So it's not just superdelegates. If you remember in 2016, the DNC did a few things. They were trying to suppress the vote, realizing that if there was going to be an influx of people hitting the polls, those people probably were voting Sanders. He was expanding the electorate. So they ended up shutting down polling locations to make polling lines longer, making it that much more difficult for people to vote. And look, it does seem like they were monkeying around with the results. I mean, the results in Iowa in 2020 gives some context of what might have taken place in 2016. And if it took place in 2020 and likely took place in 2016 because you would have had no way to know because you wasn't able to check the math in 2016, it must have happened elsewhere also, especially if you can get away with that nonsense. So personally, it's the shutting down the polling locations. It was the DNC essentially working, colluding with the Clinton campaign, with the messaging and everything else. And yeah, superdelegates. Because what they did was, look, human beings have this weird quirk about us that when it looks like somebody is the leader, people tend to lump in with the front runner. I don't know why they do that. They just do that. This is almost one of those reality things where your judgment of reality to some degree is based on what other people also say that is reality. If you understand me, it's not necessarily entirely based on your own perceptions. There are tests that show this, that if you have multiple people say and pick the wrong answer, that the person who even knows the right answer will be inclined to pick the wrong answer to go along with the group. So having superdelegates and that number being up there like it was insurmountable made it look like Sanders didn't stand a chance. And they did it over and over and over again. Entirely, that election, superdelegates didn't vote until after the election. The fix was already in, though. Hillary Clinton moving money around, meaning money that was supposed to be given to the state parties, moving it around and taking it for her own campaign. I mean, all of this stuff was utterly atrocious in the way that they were behaving in 2016. And if this is the exact same party that said we can cheat a candidate and pick a candidate in a smoke-filled room if we wanted, there's nothing you can do to stop us. It's the same party. Bill Clinton picking Tom Perez. Obama pushing Tom Perez in the race. Bill Clinton going to Tom Perez telling him, don't let Sanders take the party. Sanders, in this race, to me, by himself. All of these people on stage. Listen to this. This is iconic.
Now, we are less than 2 weeks away. We're going to have enough.
All of these people on stage.
On this.
Chuck Todd, the most oblivious man on the planet, is asked an actual really good question, basically about a brokered convention. Should the person with the most delegates get the nomination?
The person with the most delegates at the end of this primary season be the nominee, even if they are short of a majority. Senator Sanders, I'm going to let you go last here because I know your view on this.
The Democratic Party they should be, which I believe they do.
I'm trying to do
so
this,
that
yes or no,
everybody else,
fast.
everybody can.
So you want the convention to work its will?
Yes.
Senator Warren.
But a convention working its will means that people have the delegates that are pledged to them, and they keep those delegates until you come to the convention. All of the people.
All righty. Vice President Biden?
Play by the rules.
Yes or no? Leading person with the delegates, should they be the nominee or not?
No, let the process work its way out.
Mayor Buttigieg?
Not necessarily, not to listen.
Senator Klobuchar?
Let the process work.
Senator Sanders?
Well, the process includes 500 superdelegates on the second ballot. So I think that the will of the people should put down, yes.
Thank you, guys.
Most votes should become.
Every last candidate on that stage effectively said, no, we don't want the will of the people. The people choose. We don't want that. We're willing to we got to go through the process. Meaning, a vote for any of these candidates is effectively a vote for superdelegates, Clintonites, lobbyists, to effectively steal the election from the person that actually won it. You have one guy on that stage saying, I believe in democracy. Everybody else. And this is the exact same party that has been screaming for 3 years.
You're screaming.
This party has been screaming for 3 years. Hillary Clinton won by 3 million votes. Hillary Clinton won by 3 million votes.
So
all of those votes.
They wanted the votes then.
All of those votes were in California. She got stumped in the rest of the nation. It's bleeding red. In fact, California gave so many more votes to make it that 3 million. I mean, she got whooped. And they never shut up about the Electoral College for 3 years. They wouldn't shut up about it. But now,
unanimous.
Elizabeth Warren, the person with the most votes should win the race.
Could you stop doing
that? But now, none of these people who screamed about the Electoral College cares about the notion and the will of the public. Elizabeth Warren came in fourth twice, a distant fourth twice, below Buttigieg. And she's still hanging out in this race as if she's some consensus candidate that they're going to sweep in. She can't even win her own state. And no, she doesn't have black support. She doesn't have liberal support at this point. She doesn't have the support of the youth. She has the support of the wine crowd that Pete typically gets. So this notion that she's hanging in this race and she's going to be the consensus is nonsense. This party is literally arguing, and one of her surrogates argued, that winning is effectively a technicality and that the party could come together and choose a candidate. This is utterly fucking amazing logic. They may potentially use superdelegates to rip this away from Sanders. Now, if Sanders takes South Carolina, I don't think this shit will matter. He's going to have critical mass as he's going in. They can cheat him, don't misunderstand me, in the various states. But the ball of steam he would have in South Carolina is not a state that Sanders is supposed to win. But if he wins it, it would demonstrate and get across that A, he has a broad coalition of support among all of the demographics, among all of the races. Yes, the older demographic, not so much, but everybody else, yes. And the notion, the very fucking notion, that a person with that much support, with that broad tent, with that amount of people, with that ability to not alienate all of these groups to focus on issues of class and the things that are their material interests, that they are willing to use lobbyists and Clintonites to rip it away from that person. That would be the end of the Democratic Party. Mark my fucking words. That would be the end of the Democratic Party. There is no situation where that number of people will be backing that guy going into the convention. You rip it away from him, and those people are going to sit back and be okay with that.
Yeah.
None! I am telling you from personal experience. The people who are backing Sanders are not backing him in a cerebral way. This is not the same backing where it's like, yeah, I think Joe Biden can win it. It's not that. It's something that goes much, much deeper than that. There was a reason that Sanders supporters were so angry and bitter after that last race. The things that he espoused are things they've never heard before because, for the most part, the media and the political class, bought by the oligarchs in this particular country, kept that stuff off the ballot. Meaning those aren't the things that they discuss or talk about. It's not talked about in media. What are they talking about in the media today? Cuba. They think Cuba is the issue to talk about. All of these people sleeping on the streets. Cuba, all of these homeless encampments. But the issue is Cuba. People barely making ends meet. People being burdened down with medical debt. If Sanders wasn't running in this way, none of that stuff would be on the talking, the docket to be talked. Yeah. So you've had a media class and a political class that's been able to keep economic issues that affect mainstream people off the table. And for the first time, somebody is espousing that stuff. And the things that he's espousing is an empathetic, compassionate, collective politics of us working in unison where your interest is tethered to my interest, because guess what? It is. And espousing that, not hiding the ball, not being dodgy with it, espousing that, not in this flowery rhetoric, but through issues of policy that directly and materially affect all of us. It is a compelling vision, and it is a compelling vision that many of these people have, and many of these people believe almost as a religious tenet of sorts. It's ideological in the way that it presents itself. And for the first time in 40, 50 years, you have a viable candidate pushing that particular position. If you cheat that guy, if you rip that away from that guy, if they even believe you cheated that guy, you will lose them, and you will lose them for a generation. Even if the party doesn't end, you will lose those people for a generation. Think of how the African-American vote goes and votes for the Democrat. 90% of blacks vote for any random fucking milquetoast mushy Democrat. Why? Because ultimately you had a Republican Party that scared the shit out of all those African Americans, where they wed themselves for a generation to the Democratic Party in mass. Imagine the same thing happening where you have a revulsion to the Democratic Party by that demographic that was going for Sanders at 60%, 41 and below. What does it look like when all of those people immediately drain from your party, even if they don't vote Republican? They're just not voting for you. That means you lose in perpetuity. Just understand what's at stake. It is true that if Sanders takes it, yes, the Democratic Party is going to be remade in the image of Sanders. But guess what? The Democratic Party is not owned by third-way Democrats. Let's be very clear about that. The Democratic Party as a political vehicle is only there to represent the interests of the public, and the interests of the public and the ideals of the public can change. And as such, the party can either change or die. This goes back to my original argument that the party needs to either be burned to the ground if the party cannot be transformed into something that is a vehicle for public sentiment and public will in regards to economic issues.
I have some questions on this.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Tim Flowbug says, as Bernie runs away with it, will corporate or establishment Dems do a UK Lib Dem split from the party?
No.
What do you think about that?
No. I mean, look, you're going to get corporate Democrats that are going to try to shaft him, try to injure him. They're going to do attacks on him. Some of this stuff is going to be under the cover. Some of this stuff is going to be a certain degree of subterfuge where they throw him modestly under the bus. But I don't think they'll split. Splitting is different. The problem is that the overwhelming majority of the people who are in the Democratic Party agree with Sanders. Like, how are you splitting away from something when your base, the very people who back you, fundamentally agree with them? When they ask, who does your values more align with? Well, it goes to Sanders. Who do you agree with on healthcare? Sanders. What about environment? Sanders. Down the line, they've been aching for somebody to talk just like this particular guy. And so the notion that these corporate class Democrats are going to split, you may have some at the top that split. I mean, the Democratic Party has become so much of a corporate class that these people who are just Republicans that aren't racist found a home in the party. The catch is, there should be more to being a Democrat than just not being racist. And for the longest time, they've used this notion of identity as a way to dodge issues of economics. Those people may leave. The elites that are in the party may leave. Fuck them. Let them go.
Okay.
I mean, you can't serve two masters in this case. And the Democratic Party, in this weird big tent nonsense. There is no such thing as a big tent. You have interests that are diametrically opposed to one another. And if those interests are diametrically opposed to one another, are in the same tent, then I guarantee you that one of those interests are going to be served more than the other. You have dollars or you have pitchforks. And for the longest time, who do you think has been represented in the Democratic Party? I goddamn guarantee you it was not the pitchforks.
All right, next one on this topic.
Yes.
Uncle Brother says, I have never voted Republican.
Me either.
I refused to vote Democrat in the last one when they cheated Bernie and forced witchy poo on us.
Yes.
And if they do it again, yeah.
Well, keep in mind, Bloomberg being in this race, Bloomberg doesn't care if the Democratic Party implodes. He doesn't care. Bloomberg was a Republican. What Bloomberg is in this race for has everything to do with class interests. You have a plutocrat who's doing everything he can to hold back the line of a guy who's calling himself a socialist and is seeking economic reform. That is Bloomberg's only mission. Class interests. This is not party politics. Party politics is just the vehicle by which this class divide or this class fight is taking place. And isn't it not indicative of the actual fight? Now, I've argued that there was a war in the Democratic Party. I've argued this for over a year. I've argued this going back all the way because of the stuff that was taking place with AOC, the Justice Democrats. By definition, it would have had to have taken place. I didn't even understand how people didn't necessarily see it taking place back then. Right now, though, you have the clearest expression of a class fight. The guy who calls himself a socialist versus the oligarch. And that oligarch typically would have his way with the various candidates who were running for the Democratic Party. That oligarch, just like the other ones, realized that the Democratic Party can no longer be trusted because of the people who are in that party who are pushing for actual economic reforms and change. Either AOC, either Ilhan, or the front person, Sanders. Or for that matter, believe it or not, even Warren with her wealth tax was considered to be too onerous. My only point is, this is an honest expression of a class war. Sanders, representing the interests of the workers, mass support among all of the demographics, especially people who are making under $100,000 a year, pushing for policies, real material policy changes, trying to change the hegemonic norm, the hegemonic shift in the way that we view our particular society and the things that our society should ensure that we have. Not this rugged individualism nonsense, but us working to each other's ends for the betterment of all of us. And you have the plutocrat who, believing that the Democratic Party can no longer be trusted, descends into politics himself, meaning rips off the mask of who is actually pushing and backing the political space. That conflict will decide what the Democratic Party is or whether the Democratic Party would even continue to exist. This is a thematic fight. I hope you understand why I'm focusing so much on this. Whether or not Bloomberg is able to effectively use his dollars to effectively buy the election. And buying the election just means stopping Sanders. Whether the Democratic Party loses, whether they burn, whether it explodes, any of those things, Bloomberg only cares about stopping Sanders. That is the priority. That is the mission. Everything else is secondary to that. The Democratic Party going bust, Bloomberg doesn't hurt one iota. I'm just saying. He got a bump off of Trump's
Real
tax
quick,
plan.
Speaking about, why are you talking about Bloomberg? Because if Zan and James post this one more time, I'm going to block him or her. Says, I think the establishment should back Bloomberg so Bernie can wipe the floor with him and give a preview of what
is going to happen
he's
to
going
Trump.
to do to Trump.
Well, the polling that had head-to-head matchups, meaning if everyone else was out of the race, Sanders was beating Bloomberg by like 15 points.
Yeah.
He's repugnant. I mean, he just is. Like, I understand this notion that he has all of this money, but the moment that he gets on a debate stage, you saw him last night, he was utterly repugnant. Yeah. I mean, it was like this weird high voice. Well, I think it's just ridiculous. I mean, even the way he talks is utterly repugnant. Bloomberg has never been hit in the face. That's basically what it boils down to. I mean, like, linguistically. Ultimately, the people who talk to him and deal with him always want something from him.
Right, so no one's ever telling the truth to him.
Right.
Let alone hitting him in the face. Nobody's even being honest with him.
Nobody's being honest. So he gets on a debate stage, and I have no fucking clue what he thought was going to happen, and they eat him alive. Sexist, racist, bigot. And Warren tearing him to shreds with the NDA thing. You've seen it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got one more on the superdelegate. And this is actually from last week. I noted this, so I made sure I did not miss it. But Guy Citron, I don't know if it's Citron or Citron because there's no accent, but he called into the show last week, and you guys weren't able to get to his question.
Oh, what was his question?
He put it there, and I said, I'm going to bring it up today. And so it's right on topic. But he's saying, when is LeftTube going to start deep diving into the superdelegate problem? We're talking about it now, but he says, who are these people? How are they picked? How do they have to vote in the second runoff if there is a brokered convention? So, if we're going to support the narrative that the will of the people should determine the nominee, who these superdelegates are and what they stand for could be a very powerful part of it.
All right. So think of it this way. Last time around, the superdelegates effectively got to vote for whoever they wanted. So Bernie Sanders would take Vermont, but Hillary Clinton will still get like an even level of delegates from it because the superdelegates would just vote for Hillary Clinton. She had sewn up those superdelegates before the race had ever really taken place. So it was a foregone conclusion that she was going to get those votes. This time around, a deal was made that instead of getting rid of the superdelegates, they were going to put them on the first round. So the first round, they are chained, providing the person could get a majority, 51%, meaning get a majority over everyone else in the race. Now, here's the catch. I, on this channel, at the time that was taking place, I could replay the video, I said, they're still there. And I argued that there is nothing to stop. I made two arguments. There was nothing to stop them from flooding the election with enough candidates to force it into a second round. Meaning, just because you've never had a second round before doesn't necessarily mean that you won't force the second round depending upon who's running. We know that the Democratic Party was having Stop Sanders meetings. This was published in the New York Times. We know that Buttigieg, Klobuchar, Schumer, all of these people were involved in the Stop Sanders meetings in addition to lobbyists and some of these other people. We know that the Democratic Party does pick people to run in various contests. We also know that there was a pretty big fervor into trying to stop Sanders, meaning all of these things for the most part dovetail with functionally, whether these guys are functioning independently or not, but ultimately functioning with this notion of trying to stop Sanders. And superdelegates, especially now, with the race being the way it is, with Nate Silver predicting 69% chance for Sanders to effectively win the plurality of the delegates, it's not even close. For them to use superdelegates in the second round, like I said, superdelegates still exist. They could force it to a second round, and when it goes to that second round, they try to steal it. These people are Clintonites, these people are lobbyists, these people are just creatures of the party itself. You may have a few that are for Sanders, but more likely than not, think about what you know of the Democratic Party. Think about what you know of MSNBC and the people who are pronouncing on MSNBC. Think about all of these creatures of the Democratic Party and the things that they have been saying. MSNBC is their mouthpiece. That's a good idea on what the establishment of the Democratic Party thinks. What is MSNBC like towards Sanders? And do you honestly believe that the superdelegates are going to be any different? That's the rub. Why on earth would you have unelected people selecting who the choice is over the will of the population? Meaning if Sanders takes this on the plurality, technically, based on the Democratic Party's rules and the way that they allow the process to be legally rigged, they can steal it from Sanders with those superdelegates. This is why I was so against Sanders saying he'd back whoever won it, because they could steal it from you. I just showed the clip where every last Democrat on that stage said yes. And again, warns people, making the argument that just because you won on with the numbers, well, that's just a technicality. That for the most part, you can be a consensus candidate. Like, this is dramatically problematic. And again, I flagged this the moment this was taking place. All of these lefty channels were out there celebrating, yes, we accomplished this great objective. And I was like, you didn't even cut the number of superdelegates. You just moved them to the second round. They haven't gone anywhere. You honestly believe that look, if they were going to not be used, they would have just gotten rid of them. Right? I mean, what's the use of having superdelegates if you're not going to use them? No, they're there for a reason. They're there to use them when you need them, where you can flood the terminal in order to get enough people to try to force it into the second round, which is what they're trying to do with Sanders. A bunch of unelectable, unaccountable people who they just chose, creatures of the Democratic Party. If you, as Donna Brazile, want to make your case, then you are well known in your station. Your voice is big enough to make that case. You don't necessarily need the votes of 10,000 people. Also, if you use superdelegates in order to rip it away from another person, you will lose that race. But again, for lefties, the problem is they know that. They know that. They don't care. The issue here is stopping Sanders, because they understand that Sanders would reshape and fundamentally shift the tenor of the Democratic Party. Losing to Trump, if they can stop him, would allow them to maintain their power base. I mean, that's basically it. I mean, the question becomes, how far are they willing to push that? If Sanders takes it where he has twice as many delegates as anybody else, and they do that, that's not just losing in the next election, that's losing for a generation. Mark my words, I could be wrong. I've been right on all of the stuff for this election. So, mark my words on this very specific point. One of the questions had to do with Bloomberg picking Hillary Clinton. I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, he just wanted to know, did you think it was going to happen, and what were your thoughts about it if he does come out?
It's a few things. A, I don't think Bloomberg is going to win. B, if Bloomberg didn't win, Bloomberg would lose in the general election of Trump. He is the weakest fucking candidate, maybe outside of Joe Biden. People think that just because he has a lot of money, that makes him a strong candidate. Nonsense. You're trying to replace a billionaire, absolute, one billionaire, supposed billionaire, that's racist and sexist and bigoted, with another oligarch that's racist and sexist and bigoted, that's also just happened to be a Republican. This seems like utter nonsense to me. And the notion that this oligarch is somehow going to beat Trump, I don't see it at all. He will get the stuffing kicked out of him, worse than Hillary Clinton. All of the things that came up on that debate stage will be used against him vigorously. The sexual abuse claims, all that stuff, he will be attacked relentlessly on those items. But again, you must understand, Bloomberg doesn't care about necessarily winning. Bloomberg just wants to stop Sanders. The problem of the left goes beyond just winning. The problem of the left goes into winning and exceeding the primary in a way where you're not so damaged because of, the billions of dollars that Bloomberg might have spent trying to tear down your campaign. So in this very specific case, though, I don't think he's going to choose Clinton. I mean, Clinton is damaged goods. I don't even know if Clinton would be on board for accepting the vice president nomination, let alone Bloomberg choosing her. This just sounds like political fodder for me. But I could be wrong. Who knows? Who knows? Bloomberg could be like, look, I don't really want to be president. I'm just going to choose Hillary as my VP, and I immediately resign. And now we have Hillary as our president. Like, who knows?
Yeah.
I wouldn't be necessarily shocked by it, but I don't think either of them. Hillary Clinton is still one of the most hated politicians in this country. If she ran against Trump today, she'd lose. So making her your VP gets you no bang for your buck.
Right.
He's going to have to choose like a black woman or something.
Andy Quinn says, if they rob Sanders again, the Dems would cease to function as an opposition party. Trump, Pence in charge of a one-party state is a sobering thought.
It is. I mean, they would lose. I mean, that's what people need to understand. But again, losing is not the point. They would lose if it meant stopping Sanders. They would accept that. What did Chris Matthews say? Chris Matthews said the quiet thing out loud. He made the point, look, maybe the Democrats would be better off losing this time around in order to just blunt
Well,
Sanders.
that's what McCoy Williams said. He says he loves your outlook on this and agree with you 98% of the time. What do you think of Chris Matthews apologizing?
So I got
to
Matthews.
Bernie?
Yeah, so I got Matthews' apology. Well, first, let me show this real quick. This is what money gets you. This is what money gets you. Now, take a look at that real quick. Wait a minute. Right here. Now, that's, believe it or not, that's not a Mike Bloomberg ad. Meaning, this is not a Mike Bloomberg flyer. This is
Jesus
the
Christ.
Los Angeles Times. This is a paper of record, Angeles Times.
It took me a good 6 seconds to figure out what the hell I was looking at outside of Bloomberg.
That's LA Times. That's your news. Mike Bloomberg is buying all of that ad space.
Mike will fix healthcare. He'll get it done.
Yeah.
Bring us together.
It's utterly astonishing. Like, that's literally the amount of money he's been spending on those items in order to cover that. Like, to blanket social media with BS attacking Sanders. So this is Chris Matthews' apology. I saw the apology. Look, this is going to shock a lot of people. I don't think Chris Matthews meant what I think people think he meant. Now, what I mean by that is, let me find the original video. Because in the original video, Chris Matthews made the point of saying, effectively, it's over. And he compared Sanders winning to the Nazis overrunning France with that famous call that was given to Churchill by the French saying, it's over. They've already overrun us. We're already done. Now, for the first Jewish candidate for president, and you're comparing him taking over the Democratic Party and just dominating this particular field, you're comparing that to the overrun of France by the Nazis. Even if you didn't mean it in those terms, that is a gross analogy, to put it mildly. And there were calls for Chris Matthews' head over that, saying Chris Matthews should resign, he should be fired, because that's not the first time Chris Matthews has compared. I mean, he made this, allusion to brown shirts? Was that Chris Matthews, or was that was Matthews, I think. Or was that Chuck Todd?
I think that was somebody else.
That might have been Chuck Todd, I'm sorry.
Either way.
Yeah, but Chris Matthews has still been saying some unhinged shit on MSNBC. So I'm looking for the very specific clip.
Let me read this while you look for that.
Okay.
Cool Blue 71 says, if superdelegates were to steal the 2020 presidential nomination from Bernie Sanders, which is a fraud against the primaries voters, the Democratic Party will become the 21st century Whig Party.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I agree with him. I mean, it would be a hard way to go to make that case that they're a legit party. So listen to us. This is Matthews.
About the fall of France in the summer of 1940. And the General Renault calls up Churchill and says, it's over. And Churchill said, how can it be? You got the greatest army in Europe. How can it be over? He said, it's over. So I had that suppressed feeling. I can't be as wild as Carville, but he is damn smart. And I think he's damn right on this one. Joy.
Did you hear that? The fall of France. Now, I'm a military buff. In fact, my knowledge of history honestly goes to the military.
Scary.
Well, no, it just goes to the military. Like, it goes to wars. And so when I think of history, I think in terms of conflict and wars. I know that's a little weird, but I played chess for 30 years. And so that's just kind of the way I see the world in regards to action and actions. So Chris Matthews, you could honestly make an argument that what Chris Matthews is not talking about here is not so much that Bernie Sanders is the Nazis, but more so the military conquest. Like, if you're looking at military history, oftentimes you can separate this notion of the German army from the Nazis if you're purely looking at it in militaristic terms. And people who look at it in militaristic terms will look at and analyze the battles that are taking place and look at the events that are taking place. One of those famous events is that call. It's over. Now, France collapsed. And this argument of invincibility of the German army. What really took place was that France and the maneuvers that France had were somewhat counterproductive, and they were grossly slow. Germany had a military, you could say, ideology that the generals and the people in the field had a certain degree of action, meaning agency, and taking choices and maximizing their opportunities and advantages. So whereas France was slow to respond and, even communications were stilted, well, Germany was taking opportunities to advance and taking advantage of problems they saw in regards to when they were attacking. And yeah, that famous call, it's over. We're not going to continue this fight. It's over. We're done. In which case you ended up with Vichy France. Now, again, we're talking about supporters and people of the first Jewish candidate. So it's a little bit dicey to compare the first Jewish candidacy to the overrun by the Nazis. But again, if you think about it in terms of military history, and you think about it in terms of what we're talking about, like the overrunning and the complete domination of France, it's over. And you think of Nevada, where there was this overwhelming win, and Chris Matthews comparing this, saying the Democrats might be saying it's over. They can't catch him. He's built up such a head of steam that there is no way for them to stop him. You can make a case that that's where Chris Matthews was comparing this, not necessarily that Sanders was Nazis. I have to be fair. I can't just, dig the guy. But to put it mildly, that is a problematic comparison. So Chris Matthews is called to account. Even, this one is even too much for MSNBC to stomach. They made Chris Matthews go out there and give an apology. Typically, you can Bernie Sanders on MSNBC without any issues, but apparently this was too far.
In Nevada, I reached for an historical analogy and used a bad one. I was wrong to refer to an event from the last days, or actually the first days of World War II. Senator Sanders, I'm sorry for comparing anything from that tragic era in which so many suffered, especially the Jewish people, to an electoral result in which you were the well-deserved winner. This is going to be a hard-fought, heated campaign of ideas. In the days and weeks and months ahead, I will strive to do a better job myself of elevating the political discussion. Congratulations, by the way, to you, Senator Sanders, and to your supporters on a tremendous win down in Nevada. Before getting into...
All right, I'll take it. I mean, like I said, it's very possible that Matthews was using a military reference. Because look, when I look at the fall of France, it was absolute and complete and over in a heartbeat. Like, they just took France. I mean, Britain barely got off the island and had to even leave their materials and weapons and everything behind in Dunkirk. So if you're thinking of, God, it's over before it began, and then Chris Matthews is looking at a win where Sanders just trounces all of the competition in Nevada, then he could make that analogy between the two, especially if he's reading a book dealing with that. Simultaneously, it is a horrible fucking analogy
That's what I was gonna say.
to use it for a Jewish candidate.
You still got to be able to say, this might be a good comparison, but it's probably appropriate. So I know better.
Yeah.
I know better than to say that.
Massively inappropriate.
Stephen Stiles says, how hard will it be to establish another party if they steal it from Bernie? I think somebody asked something similar to that last week.
So it depends, right? I think honestly it depends on what Sanders does. It just does. If Sanders pulls away from that, is pissed off and apoplectic, and makes the point that they stole it from him, and he goes to start another party, he has support all across the United States. He has volunteers in every state across the union. And are you telling me those people are not going to be motivated as all hell to get something going if they feel that he was cheated, especially if Sanders is on board for it? That's the catch.
Yeah.
Is Bernie Sanders going to be on board for it? If he is not willing to fight on that item, then you may have a more difficult time starting. But if it's something like Abraham Lincoln pulling out of the Whigs and making the Republican Party, then yes, he could do it. And here's the thing. That would mean the death of the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party would not be able to win another major presidential contest if somebody like Sanders or that party establishes itself. You're going to suck out support from people who would have typically backed Democrats, who will just not back them in those races. And B, in the other races throughout the states, you're going to have people trying to get the other party elected. Meaning, you're going to have a situation where the support for the Democratic Party immediately fractures and goes into this other party with the figurehead of somebody like Sanders. But again, a lot of that depends on what Sanders does. And I got to be honest, I don't know if Sanders has that much fight in him to do that, unfortunately. That's my thought, anyway. Somebody asked you're going to love this. You're going to love this. So, Pete Buttigieg, who's right here arguing.
Booty, 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 booty. Oh, sorry.
All
I
of.
haven't been able to do that in a while.
Guess how much black support he has in South Carolina?
2%.
No, believe it or not, 1%. It was less than 2%. Guess how much black support he had in Nevada?
4%.
2%. So a man with 2% black support, 1% black support. And by the way, it's not so much that black support is it no be all. It's only that in the Democratic Party, blacks vote almost dump all of their energy into one party. And because they do that, that support is outsized in regards to these various states. So it is difficult, if not impossible, to win a Democratic primary without bringing minorities with you. And that is decidedly something Buttigieg is not doing. Nevertheless, faker, liar, can stand up there and say this.
This is important. We share these ideals, but I believe the best way to defeat Donald Trump and deliver for the American people.
Now, he has an Obama-esque prowess about him. I always call him Gay Obama.
Ooh.
And I don't mean that
White
as a slight...
Obama, babe.
No. He is literally gay, and he acts like Obama in the way that he talks.
Can I just acknowledge that he's got the black lady with the cornrows right behind him?
Oh, he has two black women as props.
I know, but that black lady with the cornrows, babe, he should get more than 2%. He got a black lady with cornrows there.
He got somebody real ethnic behind him, huh? Let's hear the rest of this.
And galvanize the majority that supports us on the critical issues. Senator Sanders believes in an inflexible, ideological revolution that leaves out most Democrats, not to mention most Americans.
Inflexible that leaves out most Democrats and most Americans. The Nevada caucus had almost twice as many people in it this year than last year, many of which, for the first time, caucus. You know why? To do it for Sanders. Black, white, gay, straight, under 100,000, he gets them all. He gets them all. You got 2% of the black vote. How do you say? My mom said, I never want you to be a politician. That's why. Because she didn't want me to get up broad in the face of various people and just lie. Just flagrantly, shamelessly lie. Pete Buttigieg, empirically true, is a lying motherfucker. I said it once. I'll say it again. If Pete wants to call into the show, we can talk about how he's a lying motherfucker. He is never going to call into this show in order to have that conversation. The last guy who said that, Pete Buttigieg, called him in order to have a conversation. Call me, Pete. Call me. We can do this shit live. So Pete, with a lot of other black people who also realize Pete is full of shit, Pete drives up in a car to try to get in line in a protest. Drives up in a car, jumps in line to try to get in line with a protest. Let's look at what happens. It sounds like they're saying Pete can't be our president.
That's what they said.
And them chasing him off. Pete Buttigieg, look at this. He's running away from the protest. Do you think Bernie Sanders would ever be ran away from a protest?
Because he said Pete can't be our president, something 15, something.
Oh, he's being chased off. He's being chased off. He's running away. He's like, he pulled up in a car, got out, and tried to jump in the protest march. He was so excited. He's like, I'm going to get filmed on protest. And then he got a reality check. Here, bitch. You're not using us as props.
Not today.
You're not
today, Satan.
You know, there's another video where Pete Buttigieg is in church, and he has all of these black people around, and Buttigieg is like he's into whatever is being said. And I'm like, run! You're being used as props! You're being used as props! Well, these people weren't having it. They weren't having it. You're not going to be using us as props. You're not using us as props, buddy.
Oh, they said Pete can't be our president. Where's our 15 in South Bend?
Oh! and chasing
Shout
him
out to
away,
the
chasing him away.
To the picket line freestyling.
He can speak all those languages, but he
and
can't
they're going
speak that
after him.
language.
Look, that girl was coming across the grass for him. Somebody said it looked staged.
Just look at her pointing. Look at her pointing. She's pointing. It's not staged. It was trying to be staged where he went there and trying to be a part of the protest. But this is a motivated community that refuses to be used as props by these political actors. Pete Buttigieg being one of them. So this is a beautiful thing.
I'm glad that they were smart enough to not be like, oh my God, Pete Buttigieg is here. They were like,
Pete can't be our president. Where was our 15 in South Bend? Pete can't be our president. Love this. I love this. I love this.
Best chant ever.
Best chant ever. Chases his ass away. Look at him. He's getting into the black car. He's getting into the car. Drive it off.
Yeah, they were coming after him. That chick was walking across the grass like, oh, you wait a minute. I got some things to say.
I'm applauding that. Fucking class interests. 40 billionaires. He has 40 billionaires backing him. And he's jumping out in order to be part of a protest that he wasn't necessarily in, but was pretending to be a part of. That's Pete Buttigieg. Lying motherfucker. Fake. Lying motherfucker. Pete Buttigieg. That's a beautiful picture. I love that. Take a bong hit to that. That's awesome. That's awesome. That is awesome.
They were like, get the
class interest, baby. Class interest.
FOH. All right, we got some super chats when you're done with this.
Go for it.
So let me know. You done?
Yeah.
You done? Somebody asked, was I paying attention? I was paying attention. I'm trying to moderate in the chat because there was some sex bots in here.
Moderating bitches.
Wilhelm Rupenshire, if that's a real name, shout out to you. Says, if Bernie is one delegate short with 50% and 1990 delegates in the second round, that same 1990 delegates equals 41.9% because the total amount of delegates decreases in the second round.
Well, still, I mean, we don't want super delegates stealing it. You know what I mean? It's just...
Ashley Lauren says the black newspaper called the Georgia Star had a full-page ad of Mike for Black America.
That's amazing. That's just money. Like, think about that. Like, that's just cash. Bloomberg is going to spend $1 billion potentially just in the primary. And think about what that $1 billion could be used for. And then ask me again why I say billionaires shouldn't exist. I mean, he is literally just a literal oligarch. A literal oligarch. Take a look at this. So this is Steve Schmidt. Do you know who Steve Schmidt is? Steve Schmidt is the one. That's his name, Schmidt.
How do you process?
Steve Schmidt. Roundhead Steve Schmidt. Schmidt is the one that has introduced Sarah Palin to the political discourse.
Oh, God.
He was the one who was pushing McCain, who was McCain's campaign person, and he chose Sarah Palin. Now, if you ever read the book Game Changer, you will get across how dumb as a box of rocks Sarah Palin actually was. And that's being generous. She didn't know anything. She was like a blank slate. They just thought, she's a woman, you're old and decrepit, it's a deal. Right, she has an 80% approval rating. Well, she had an 80% approval rating because she was giving money back from the oil and gas to the actual people in the form of a paycheck, which is something I agree with. But the moment that you get her on the main stage and you realize, oh my God, this woman is dumb as a box of rocks, then that's a whole nother question. Keep in mind, Steve Schmidt put Sarah Palin, one 80-something-year-old heartbeat away from the presidency. The campaign person who was helping Schmidt was so rattled by this that she ends up writing a horror book with the idea of somebody like Sarah Palin winning the White House. That's the Steve Schmidt that MSNBC added to their roster of talking heads. And listen to what that talking head told this flagrant liar who got fired for lying, Brian Williams.
That's the fact that tomorrow night we're going to have 7 people on stage. 2 of them are billionaires. 2 of them look at real double-digit poll numbers, knowing that money bought those poll numbers, not some inner need to have them as our next president. How do we process that?
Well, I think that there are 2 different cases, right? So first off, Mike Bloomberg was the mayor of New York City for 12 years. And by any objective standard, he was one of the most competent, successful leaders of large government anywhere in the world over the last quarter century. He was a profoundly successful mayor. I think it's a mistake for Democrats to attack somebody like Mike Bloomberg, who grew up in a middle-class circumstance and is a self-made man, is one of the country's greatest philanthropists. And I disagree with him on a number of different issues. But if you are invested in progressive causes, it's hard for me to think of anybody who has done more to advance progressivism, whether it's on gun issues, whether it's on climate, than has Mike Bloomberg.
That's astonishing that he would say that.
How can you say that with a straight face?
But he does. I mean, but Schmidt is a Republican backing a Republican in the Democratic primary. So it makes all the sense in the world. But think about what Schmidt just said there. He's given his full-throated endorsement to Mike Bloomberg. He also gave a full-throated endorsement to Sarah Palin, so much so that he put her 180-something-year-old man's heartbeat away from the presidency. John McCain just died. John McCain could have died in office, and Sarah Palin would have been your president. Put that in mind. You want to know who brought that dumb as a box of rocks person into the American political discourse? Steve Schmidt. This one, who's now backing Bloomberg and saying how effective Bloomberg is in progressive causes. Bloomberg, who stopped near hundreds of thousands of innocent African Americans and Hispanic men for no reason but being black, and then boasted that, yeah, the overwhelming majority of the crime, like 90% of the crime, are caused by blacks to blacks. So if you just put cops affecting and acting and looking at blacks, then, you know, for the most part, you've solved your problem. He even went so far as to say we were stopping too many whites. That was the problem. The 10% of whites we were stopping, that was too many. Overwhelming majority in the sense of like 80-something% or 90% were innocent of anything. Didn't have squat on him. He was just stopping random black people for being, unfortunately, black. That's all. Schmidt is arguing that that guy is the most progressive guy, or has done the most for progressive causes. Bernie Sanders, not even being in the presidency, was able to get Amazon to increase its wages by $15 an hour. Think about that. Bernie Sanders, by himself, has moved the political discourse on the sense of Medicare for all and this notion of paying off student debt. That was not something that was on the agenda.
We were never going to have this conversation.
Never.
Before 2016?
He's not even president and did that. He literally changed the Overton window of discourse in the Democratic Party, potentially for years. And if he wins, for a generation. And you are, with a straight fucking face, arguing that Mike Bloomberg is the person who's put the most progressive cause. You've lost your mind. You've lost your mind. Steve Schmidt is... It's astonishing to me that these people could get on there and say that. But you have Brian Williams, who's a flagrant liar, who got fired for lying, and Schmidt, who at this point has introduced the world to Sarah Palin to be vice president, thinking that she was qualified. And John McCain has the nerve to stand there with a banner called Country First. Country First my ass. She couldn't even name the magazine that she wrote, and then got mad. And Nicole Wallace saying, you didn't prep me well. Katie Couric just asked her, what magazines do you read? She couldn't even name one. Because she didn't read anything. She didn't read anything. Schmidt. That's the guy.
Stop
Schmidt.
saying his name.
That's his name, Schmidt. Steve Schmidt. Republican.
All right, I have some super chats.
Go for it.
And can you pull up Streamlabs, please?
Yeah.
Megan Morales says, I distinctly remember the era of MSDNC.
Yeah.
When they switched from progressive voices like Cenk and Melissa Harris Perry to neocons like Schmidt and Bush 2's comms director, I forgot her name.
Well, even, I think she's someone, Nicole Wallace, but even Morning Joe, I mean, he's just a Republican. I mean, these channels, and honestly, if this is supposed to be the left-leaning party and the MSNBC is literally the mouthpiece of the Democratic Party, every bit as much as Fox News, I don't even know how that's in question at this point. And the guy who's running in the Democratic Party, the true left-leaning person that represents the values of the Democratic Party, when you're talking about just the regular people in the party, MSNBC, the mouthpiece of the Democratic establishment, is outright vitriolic and hateful towards that person.
Yeah.
Like, it's utterly astonishing. So, like, you get a experiential reality. Like, you get to see reality in real terms just based on the way they behave, based on who they represent. Like, it's utterly astonishing. The catch becomes, what does MSNBC do if Sanders takes the nomination? Isn't that
Nothing
some shit?
for a couple of days. Like, we're going on vacation.
That's, man, what do they do? Like, are they going to go after him while he's running against Trump? Are they going to just know where their bread is buttered and say, all right, we're going to, change this model.
This is what the people want.
This is what the people want now, so let's just go this way. Or are they going to be working behind the scenes to put a knife in him? What is MSNBC going to do if Sanders takes the nomination? I mean, they're melting the fuck down on those airways. Joy-Ann Reid, of everybody, honestly, came to this awareness, this epiphany that was actually quite good. But many of them were melting the fuck down.
All right, we got some other ones to get to before. McCoy Williams Jr. said, did you see that Warren faked the barbershop thing in South Carolina?
What barbershop
I heard
thing?
about that, but I didn't see that.
She faked
something about a fake barbershop. So you need to write that down and look at that. Also, Charles Pereira says, are you going to make a video about Cenk not accepting
union.
TYT workers' right to union?
Yeah. So
he says the funniest thing is that they're not talking about it now.
Well, the wild part about it is, so basically for people who don't know, there was a section of TYT apparently that there was a silent thing of doing a union, meaning they silently and quietly talked to the various members of TYT. I forget the section of TYT, but it basically, I think it was called the IATSE union, some to that effect. Apparently, they gave this to the Young Turks, and the Young Turks wanted to have their own secret ballot for this. At least that's the Young Turks' argument. We wanted to have a secret ballot. We didn't know what this necessarily was about. We wanted to have our own vote to make sure that everybody won it, because some anonymous people came to us and told us that they didn't necessarily want to be involved in getting higher wages for a union. So now, later on, you find a greater reality to it, where Cenk was having a conversation with the various members of TYT, and he gave this impassioned, emotional plea for them to not start a union, making the argument that, look, we're a small company, and as a small company, we can't necessarily accommodate the increased wages of increased costs of a union. Now, unions do incur increased costs because they're a union and they're trying to get higher wages for the people who are employed at that company. And so there's that. Part of me is sympathetic to Cenk here. Part of me is not. Now, I need to explain what I mean by this. I have dual mind. TYT, whatever you want to think of it, is a company. It is a business. The goal of every business is to maximize their profit. And in pursuit of maximizing their profit, they do what they need to do to cut costs. Oftentimes, one of the highest costs has to do with wages, meaning employees. So there's just an inherent pressure at employee wages from the people who are at the top who want to make more and get to make the decisions versus the people who are at the bottom who, in order for them to make more, need to make less. Not to mention you have operational costs of the business in and of itself. But the key point here is wages is usually something that's expensive. A company's job, believe it or not, is to make cash. First and foremost. Everything else is secondary to that. That must be understood. Meaning that whatever a company does, whether it's fixing hamburgers, whether it's building cars or boats or planes, or whether it's doing the news like TYT, first and foremost, its main job is to make profit. Its secondary job is whatever else is doing, the stupid human trick that allows it to make profit. TYT is a news organization that is focused on left-leaning politics, meaning a tick to the left of the Democratic Party. And in being a tick to the left of the Democratic Party, there's an ideology built into the narrative of the network. But again, a company, its job is to maximize its profit. If it has an ideology, that ideology has to be to maximize its profit, right? Well, no, because TYT has an ideology built into its business model. Meaning the business model that TYT goes with has progressivism as its core. We are the network, we're the home of the progressives. Unions, shoulder and shoulder with progressives. Either worker co-ops, public ownership, or unions. Those things are hand in hand with any notion of progressivism. And TYT, for the most part, has been a strong defender of unions, apparently up until the point it becomes their network. And the real reality of things where unions just so happen to cost more for the obvious reason that they're getting more for their employees. So TYT's main point is, look, we're a small network and we're barely making ends meet. And to bring on a union is going to increase the costs of doing business for this network and make it difficult to make the moves that we want to make as a network. But of course, if you're a worker at that network, your thought is, that's not, we want the best in our interest also. Meaning, whatever you think for the books and everything else, we believe that you're doing better than what you say you're doing and that you can accommodate this union where we can get paid in higher wages.
Right.
We can have something to represent our interests. Now, if you're a progressive network and you believe in the ideology that what you espouse, then you're somewhat stuck with that quirk, that problem of serving two masters. Which master do you serve? The one that deals with your economic interests or the one that deals with your lefty interests?
It depends. There are some companies who are like somebody mentioned, like co-ops and stuff like that.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Worker co-ops,
right?
Public ownership or unions. TYT is not a worker
right.
co-op, and so from the standpoint of the left, the first thought is, well, union. What did Sanders' team do? They unionized their field office.
I'm about to start a union.
Well, the thing is, when they unionized, Sanders did that knowing it was going to cost him more to do so. Meaning he understood that to some degree it might have inhibited his ability to use that money and resources elsewhere, but he ends up, for ideological reasons, starting that union in his campaign. That's something nobody has ever done before. So TYT, again, with an ideology, I would argue is to some degree stuck with having to let them form that union. And they should have did it almost on a whim.
But they did.
They didn't.
Yeah, Chief said no.
It's not easy. Don't misunderstand me. They're serving two masters, but the problem is your entire business model is based on progressive ideals.
Progressive.
And so if your entire
Fight
business
for 15,
model,
and Wolfpack,
that's
and
your
everything
thing,
else,
right?
But you guys can't unionize because it's gonna mess with our bottom dollar.
It's problematic to our bottom dollar.
That's
so,
about the money.
however you needed to work that from the standpoint of trying to organize, you should have just allowed them to do it. Now, because it's bad press, and it looks like you don't have the courage of your convictions to not allow them to do it. I'm not saying it's not more expensive. I'm not saying there would be difficulties in trying to make that work. But I'm saying that just based on the model of your show and the things that you espoused for the last 10 years, it becomes problematic for you to not go along with that.
For this. It wasn't the defense from either him or someone else that because they're a small company.
Yeah, that was Uygur. Uyghur's he was making this kind of emotional plea of like, look, we're a small organization. We can't bear the cost that you're talking
Small
that
in
you're
what
asking us to
way?
bear.
Like number of staff or revenue?
Well, so they got several loans, like one $20 million from Katzenberg. He's a big Democratic contributor. But from their standpoint, and to be fair to them, there are a lot of organizations that started to bleed off staff, especially from the standpoint of media. They're not alone in that. I mean, there was a lot of media personalities or personnel floating around that got fired from the various news organizations. So there is pressure on the network. The Blaze was absolutely falling apart. I think that was Glenn Beck's thing. Now, TYT chest thump over the Blaze falling apart. And so, this is kind of a redoing of that. Some people make the argument that this is a political stunt, meaning this union is organized with the person who's running against Uygur. And by trying to get these people to unionize, they're using that as a way of saying Uygur doesn't have the courage of his convictions. He's saying he's a lefty, he's progressive, but look at him trying to stop them from forming this union. The union people say, well, this was predated this election. So, these kind of allegations are going around. But like I said, it's a difficult position to be in. Two masters that you're serving. A corporation's job is to make cash. TYT is a corporation, it's just the company. By the same token, you have an ideology that the company is literally the bedrock foundation of that particular company. Progressive ideals, public ownership, worker co-op, or unions. All of those things are looked at as being the way that workers somehow balance the demands or balance the natural pressure from management to put the cost on the workers, meaning to push cash up to the top while putting more pressure on the workers and their salaries. And so it becomes a difficult thing for the company that calls itself the home of the progressives to not be on board for this union. Initially, TYT said they were on board, they're not against it. But again, the conversation that Uyghur had with the various people made it clear that, look, don't do this. Don't go through with this. So, like I said, I'm nuanced on this because he's in this weird situation of having to serve both masters at the exact same time. To be fair, though, all companies, or many companies, make that argument of, we can't afford this, our expenses are too high, et cetera, et cetera. So this could just be, again, kind of in line with the way companies try to deal with unions and stop those unions from forming. But this story is, I would imagine, continuing. But I strongly suspect TYT is going to be stuck in a situation where it's going to have to form that union. And if you got to form that union, you should have just did it.
Now, just to be clear, I don't think Jamal is saying TYT is the devil.
I didn't say that.
Well, not necessarily devil, but people are like, there's some good in TYT, and I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for TYT.
I never said that.
And Bernie...
Wait.
Let me finish what I'm saying, because I'm not being literal. People are saying that. I don't want to read all of the comments, but there is a conversation being had about how there has been some good to come out of TYT. And in 2016, a lot of the publicity that Bernie got was from TYT. I remember watching... Right.
Like singularly from TYT.
I remember us watching Whisper a Dream. Yeah. They were saying, we were talking about that the other day.
You must understand.
So it's not that TYT is the devil. It's just that a lot of people lost respect for TYT after Hillary.
Clinton.
Right.
Russiagate. Right. Like they, for the most part, were just MSNBC. I mean, let's be honest. And then the argument became whether the $20 million from Katzenberg influenced the behavior of the channel and the content on that channel, since they just look like MSNBC. I mean, let's be honest. Let's call it what it is. Yeah. But let's also be honest with a lot of people would have never entered this particular political tenor without TYT over the last decade. Let's be honest. I mean, all of these things contribute to people and their political evolution. You could say the same thing about Sam Cedar. You could say the same thing about Tom Hartman. Like all of these guys who, of some degree, lost respect from hardcore lefties, were political arches. I mean, they brought people along from, at the very least, opening their mind to ideas on the left. Right. Whether or not those people just stopped there with those people, that's another thing. But at the very least, that those people open their eyes. TYT also has to be considered into that. I mean, for the last 10 years, what other network was pushing lefty ideas? It wasn't MSNBC. It wasn't anything on mainstream news. It was TYT. And you have a lot of people who have ended up with a certain political awareness on the left. That gateway was TYT. So, I'm not of mine. I'm not one of those people that think TYT needs to be imploded or done away with. I think it's done really good stuff. I just don't necessarily like the tenor of it recently with the Russiagate stuff and the Clinton stuff. Mm-hmm. And it does seem like, to some degree, that the content has just gone MSNBC light. I used to joke that all the time, but that seems to be almost literally true. Is there really that much deviation? Maybe on issues of Sanders. Don't misunderstand me. Yes, they're definitely on board for Sanders, just like I'm on board for Sanders. So on those issues, not so much. But is there really that much of a deviation in the way it covers Trump and the way it covers Russiagate? Not really. I mean, Uyghur went so far as to say Vladimir Putin was whispering in Trump's ear. Whispering in his ear. I need you to go and do this. And then when you make the point to him, well, what about the missile treaties that he got rid of? What about putting the missiles in space? What about attacking Venezuela? What about attacking Iran? I mean, none of these things are in Russia's interests. All of these things are against Russia, what they want. I mean, what about getting rid of the Iran deal? And he doesn't really have an entire answer for that. So, they just came across to me as MSNBC-like. And that seemed to have been the way. And the moment that you tell people vote Clinton, you lose mass people just lose
like
respect.
Even Bernie was booed when he said that.
Yeah.
In 2016.
Yeah. And Uyghur makes this long video about why he's voted for Clinton and attacking people. And then Anna comes out screeching and screaming, hysterical, talking to her. She can't. She was angry at people or women who's voting for Trump. She's like, I lost respect for women who voted for Trump.
Okay. All right, I have a super chat, and then we have to go to the next topic. Sophia Martinez said, would you be willing to cover the entirety of the info available on Bernie's civil rights work?
Oh, God.
Says, I have some evidence if you haven't heard about it.
Well, if she has evidence, send me evidence on it.
Send it to the email,
that could be
Sophia.
pretty extensive. Yeah.
because we were talking about Biden. So let's go to the next topic. Also, we have a little over 500 people here. If you are enjoying the content, make sure you give the video a thumbs up. It helps YouTube algorithm to let more people know that we are live, so more people can join the live stream, even though we're not going to be on for too much longer, probably.
You have a question? Because I want to do the debate tonight, which means I want to get dinner.
Oh.
Yeah, I haven't eaten anything.
I was about to say, what are we eating for dinner? I forgot that we were on the show. Okay, so we'll have that conversation after. If you are not aware, today is Contributor Appreciation. Once a week, Jamal takes a video out to give thanks for everybody who supports the channel, and that's what this is today. We put a post on the Patreon platform that says, what do you want to hear talked about in this week's show? And the patrons give us their topic suggestions, and we use that to fuel the content for today. If you're not familiar with what Patreon is, you are watching a YouTube content creator and you say that you want to support them monetarily, and you make a commitment once a month to give $1, $2, $10, whatever it is, and every dollar helps. But it is a monetary contribution monthly to support a content creator. And so if you are not aware, Jamal does have a Patreon. He also does accept PayPal, and we always love super chats and
Hardest working man on YouTube.
Somebody said that earlier.
Oh, really?
In the stream chat.
Hardest working man on YouTube.
Wait, I'm not finished with my spiel.
Think about
I'm not finished with my spiel.
I'm sorry, go for it.
The voluminosity of my spiel.
Go for it.
Okay. Go for it. I lost my train of thought. But even if you're not giving money, still, thank you for being here. Make sure that you are subscribed and hit the bell notification icon, because sometimes the notifications do come through. But if they don't, make sure you're checking periodically, because even though he does have the show, if you're not aware, Political Misfits, 12 to 2 p.m. on Sputnik Radio 105.5 if you're in the D.C., Maryland, Virginia area.
And you even pronounced it right, Sputnik.
I'm on
That's the Russian way to do it. You know, it's funny. I pronounce it Sputnik because that's the Russian way to do it. If you're going to ask somebody, if you're going to ask a Russian how you pronounce a Russian word and they give you the pronunciation, then that's right.
Then that's what it is. That's how you pronounce it. So it's Sputnik.
But Americans pronounce it Sputnik.
Well, when I used to say Sputnik because on the commercial on the channel, they say Sputnik.
But that's how Americans pronounce it.
But I want to pronounce it how Russians pronounce it.
I just pronounce it the way it's supposed to be Sputnik. Now, so we had an internal conversation. I was like, dude, that's like, that sounds too Russian.
Sputnik?
But yeah. They was like, that sounds too Russian. I was like, but that's how you pronounce it. I was like, yeah, but I don't know. Like, even though we work on the network, it still is in your head how the population sees you and views you for working on the network. But look, I get the freedom to say whatever the fuck I want. I can't curse. But beyond that.
Yeah, the other day, can I tell him what you said on live the other day?
What, Jesus Christ?
He said Jesus Christ. Cool. Well, he was having a hard time getting something else out, and he was like, Jesus Christ. And I remember when you guys were doing like your practice runs, you told me there was a list of words that you couldn't say. And when you said it, I was like, oh shit. Well, but nobody reacted, and I was like, well, maybe that wasn't on the list.
They ended up dumping that part. Like Jesus Christ, like blacked it out or something like that.
Yeah. All right, really quick.
There's a question on receipts.
Pandastraton
on how they're going to pay for it.
Says San Francisco declares state of emergency.
For what?
State of emergency. San Francisco Gate.
For what?
I don't know. That's all that I got.
I'll check it out.
He's writing it down. All right, let's go to the
question on how we're going to pay for it.
How are we going to pay for it? It's not like our bills are due. Yeah. All right, so we did have one. I want to read it from what the patron submitted on the Patreon platform. There were a lot of comments, so I have to get to the one that is relevant.
It was basically, how is Sanders going to pay for his programs?
Well, he says, Vortex says, many folks who are skeptical about Bernie often ask me where he's getting the money to fund his ambitious platform. I point to the wealth tax on Wall Street, but that only explains so much. Can you offer advice on how to handle this sort of questioning? And that comes from Vortex on Patreon.
So I'm going to let Sanders explain it himself. Now, keep in mind, we spend trillions. We've cut taxes going back from the time of Kennedy, and even if you want to go before Kennedy, where the tax rate was over 90%, to 70% under Kennedy, all the way down to like 30% under Reagan. This is the richest country on the planet. 95% of the income gains went to the top 1%. And we're talking about a situation where, 6 people have more wealth than half of the population? Like, we're talking about ungodly numbers of wealth. with a political system, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, that has assiduously worked to ensure that that wealth continues to skyrocket in the hands of a 1% at the expense of everyone else. Now, if you're asking, how do you pay for it? A wealth tax, Sanders starts off with. He also goes to expanding Social Security, meaning expanding the money. Essentially, right now, we pay a certain percentage for Social Security. But that percentage for people who make uber incomes, well, they pay the same amount as you do. So at a certain point in the year, they no longer have to pay anymore because of the share of their income. Well, if you get rid of that, then they pay a percentage for Social Security, which increases the amount of money that goes into Social Security. Like, there's all sorts of plans. Even taxing speculation from the standpoint of Wall Street, even that gets you a ton of bucks, and it starts to inhibit this notion of speed trading, where these guys go into and doing these like computer programs that inches off, effectively cheating in the stock market. He has multiple ways of paying for his plans. This is Sanders being asked this question at the town hall.
Here's what I want to do. Chris, I'm going to give this to you. I thought that question might come up. All right, here it is. This is a list which will be on our website tonight of how we pay for every program that we have developed. But let me give you some examples. Here's what I want to do. Chris, I'm going to give this to you. I thought that question might come up. All right, here it is. This is a list which will be on our website tonight of how we pay for every program that we have developed. But let me give you some examples. Here's what I want to do. Chris, I'm going to give this to you. I thought that question might come up. All right, here it is. This is a list which will be on our website tonight of how we pay for every program that we have developed. But let me give you some examples. Here's what I want to do.
All right, so what Sanders did was release a plan that effectively said, this is how we pay for all of our programs. Right here. This is what he's been sending everyone to. Now, this is actually a really good idea, because you allow this to go out the day before you go into a debate, which means when people are asking you, how do you pay for it? How do you pay for it? You literally go into detail on how you pay for it. College for all and canceling student debt. It will cost $2.2 trillion to make public colleges, university, and trade schools tuition free and cancel all student debt over the next decade. It is fully paid for by a modest tax on Wall Street speculation that will raise an estimated $2.4 trillion over the next 10 years. Expanding Social Security. Bernie's bill to expand Social Security would increase the benefits for low-income seniors and people with disabilities by more than $1,300 a year. Now, as somebody who was living off of Social Security, when I was having kidney failure, not having a job, you don't get much. I mean, you're talking about $1,100 a month to cover your expenses, your living situation, and everything else. You are effectively destitute, barely making ends meet. And if you're somebody who's worked your entirety of your life and then you retire with no money in the bank, which is like most of us, then that $1,300 or that $1,100 was going to be the money that you would need to live. How do you live off that? And think about, after putting all of your energies and material, physicality into a job, into something that makes our society better in some particular way, to retire with the indignity of not having anything and being destitute. Those people, as they get older, work to the benefit of all of us. The things that they produce, the things that they did, the services that they put their bodies into, to some way benefited each and every one of us. And the notion that a society that once people get past their usefulness to that particular society, that we throw them away, that just seems utterly horrendous. I mean, is it just me? I can't, I have family members that get older after working all of these years, and finally they get to the point where they retire and they are barely making ends meet. They went from a situation where their paycheck was paycheck to paycheck to paycheck, finally retiring with no money in the bank. And then the question becomes, okay, how am I going to live off of $1,100 a month or $1,200 a month? Whatever that number is, how do you live off of that?
Well, I remember when I worked for the hospital, And for a couple of years, I worked doing financial assistance, and they had a program where you could get a reduction on your medical expenses. And a vast majority of the people who would sign up for this program had Social Security, and a lot of their income, I mean, they qualify for 100% reduction, meaning that their income was that low.
Because they didn't have anything.
And they had social, I mean, they were on Social Security. That was their only form of income. And it was like, oh, okay, well, then they're probably going to qualify for this program.
It's perpetual poverty.
It was specifically for indigent population.
Yeah, but it's perpetual poverty. I guess my point is, do we want, as a society, to allow people, after working the entirety of their lives, what if that was you? I mean, to some degree, that is you. If you were born in that particular situation, working in that particular job, whatever the particular reason, do people have inalienable rights, especially from the standpoint of the way it relates to their society? So rights are given in some respects by the society. Do we as a society want to evolve to the point that people, once they get of a particular age, they don't leave the workforce and just struggle? They don't leave the workforce and just struggle, especially when some of us have done so well at the expense of those people. Keep in mind, anybody that is rich, whether it's Bloomberg, whether it's Bezos, whether it's Elon Musk, all of those people, none of those people would have a dime if it wasn't for the workers that were making that particular product or doing that particular service. None of them. They could have the best ideas in the world. If it wasn't for the workers that make those ideas come to fruition, they would have squat. It is utterly bizarre to me. Utterly bizarre. As bizarre as it is for kings and queens to exist, to say that a person who could not do what they did without the help of all of these workers should somehow end up with $80 billion or $50 billion or $20 billion. That's utterly obscene. They didn't do that by themselves. And if they didn't do that by themselves, why are they taking that much of the wealth? 95% of the income gains. Like, that number is astonishing to me. How is that fair? How on earth is that fair? And so, when I make my argument about, there needs to be some level of change in the way that we organize our priorities, here we are. So yes, you tax various elements of the society that is done monstrously, magnificently well. The entire reason Bloomberg is in this race is to preserve his class status. Expanding Social Security. Bernie's bill to expand Social Security will increase benefits for low-income Americans by more than $1,300. It's fully paid for in making the wealthiest 1.8% of Americans, those with incomes over $250,000 a year, pay the same rate into Social Security as working families. This is what I mean when I say beforehand that number was cut off. The bill would extend the solvency of Social Security into 2070, ensuring Social Security can pay every benefit owed to every eligible American for the next 50 years. Housing for all. Bernie proposal to guarantee housing as a human right and to eliminate homelessness will cost $2.5 trillion over the next decade. It is fully paid for by a wealth tax on the top 0.1%, those who have a net worth of at least $32 million. Bernie Sanders' wealth tax will raise $4.35 trillion. Universal pre-K and childcare. Bernie's proposal. Oh, go ahead.
I want to read. I'm just sitting here. Bernie's proposal to guarantee universal child care and preschool to every family in America who needs it will cost $1.5 trillion. It is fully paid for by a wealth tax on the top 0.1%, those who have a net worth of at least $32 million. The wealth tax will raise a total of $4.35 trillion. Eliminating medical debt. Bernie has introduced a proposal to eliminate all of the $81 billion in past due medical debt held by 79 million Americans.
Now,
it is fully paid for by establishing an income inequality tax on large corporations that pay CEOs at least 50. I've never seen this before, and when I was reading that, I was getting excited because
medical debt is
that is
brutal.
A big deal.
Now, the reason, this is logical, by the way. People are like, oh, he's desperate. He's not desperate. You have to do this. If you push through Medicare for all and you say people with medical expenses going forward don't have to pay, what's the most logical thing that people with medical expenses are going to say? Well, what about me? I mean, you're saying these people don't have to pay for medical debt going forward. I have $100,000, $200,000, $1 million in medical debt.
$81 billion in past due medical debt.
Yeah, he's going to get rid of it.
I don't know of anyone that doesn't know someone that has some form of medical debt.
I had millions of dollars of medical debt on my back. Like, it's hard to get that across. If I lived in Germany, I would have no bills. None. I don't I don't waste money on that stuff.
Wait, not Germany.
No, Germany.
If you lived in Bernie's America.
No, in Germany.
In Bernie's America, babe. We don't gotta go to Germany.
We don't have Bernie's America yet. If
Not
I
yet.
lived in Germany, if I lived in London, if I lived like pretty much any European country, I would have no debt. Why? Because they're bright enough to cover college and they're bright enough to cover medical expenses, two major items that are on the backs of Americans that we have to cover for ourselves. Look, we as a society can come together and choose to cover whatever we want. It's not giving anything away. It's using the resources of the country that we produce in the interest of the people who produce them, as opposed to having those things get sucked away to a top 1%. The notion that you have somebody with $80 or $50 billion and you have people living on the street, that is obscene. Not to mention everything that your society say it believes in, these number of values. People always like to talk about their goddamn values. What values? I'll tell you what your values are. Your values are whatever is. Those are what your values are. Meaning, if you have homeless people on the streets, living in encampments in freezing fucking cold weather, and you have somebody with $50 billion running in the presidential race to ensure that he keeps his $50 billion, those are your values. And those are values being espoused by the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party, with a Republican, effectively an oligarch, trying to stop the public from enacting its will into changing the hegemonic norms of this particular country. And yeah, he's going to get rid of medical debt. Green New Deal, $16.3 trillion climate plan that Bernie has introduced will fundamentally transform our energy systems away from fossil fuels towards energy efficiency and renewable energy. This will also create 20 million good-paying jobs, union jobs. Hear that, Cenk Uygur? In the process, it is fully paid for by raising $3.085 trillion by making fossil fuels industry pay for their pollution through litigation. This is important. Ultimately, you have a situation where in our system, our capitalistic system, you have companies that went to get oil and gas, got kickbacks. Because again, you have these companies also donating and giving money to politicians. And despite destroying the environment, knowing they were destroying the environment, ExxonMobil knew, these oil companies knew, that didn't stop them from moderating their behavior. No, and they attacked people, putting out this stuff that climate change is a myth stuff, in order to maintain their profits. Meaning, they took their economic self-interest over the existence of people on planet Earth. Be very clear. It's logical in the sense that they're going to be dead by the time climate change really comes into fruition, but their profits, and they can use those profits, are now. Their job is not necessarily to pay attention to the larger society. Their job is to pay attention to how they're going to make more money for themselves and their company. And that's exactly what they did. Now, somebody sitting outside of that can say that's utter lunacy. These guys are psychopaths. They're going to end the world in order to make profit, something that's not real. Yeah, but you have a capitalistic system and you have a very specific responsibility that doesn't necessarily include the larger world. What they want to do is maximize their profit. It's just so happened that the thing that allows them to do that is destroying the planet. Or at the very least, 50% destroying the planet, or cows and agriculture is the other one. Sanders' point is, you knew this was killing the planet. You knew this was threatening life on Earth, and you did it anyway. And they're suing the shit out of them for it. Because what do we expect to take place? Are we, the society, supposed to cover their ass and fix a problem that they created? Is that what we're supposed to do? Meaning, they have all of these, they externalize all of these costs. And one of the costs that they externalized was putting a lot of shit into the atmosphere that was adversely affecting life on Earth. I mean, they knew they were doing this. They were not unclear that this was causing an issue. They knew it, and they did it anyway. They wanted to make more money. So fair enough. You knew you were doing that. But you're not going to be able to externalize these costs. Meaning you're not putting these costs on the American public to fix a problem that you started while you get to run away with the profits. So yeah, he's trying to take them to court for litigation. You can make an argument that people should be put in prison over it. generating $6.4 trillion in revenue from the wholesale of energy produced by the Regional Power Marketing Administration. The revenue will be collected from 2023 to 2035, and after 2035, electricity will be virtually free. This is my idea. My idea was, if you're running in the race, you should try to find ways to get rid of various planks of control for various people. Meaning, electricity being one of them. Now, if that means putting solar panels on every house, if that means ensuring that each house is built in a way where it can receive energy and pull that energy to give that energy to the grid when it's not being used, but being used during, like this, take people away, get rid of their bills, affect their material self-interest, meaning if they don't have to pay a power bill, how much is that? Or if their power bill is dramatically reduced, how much money do you save people in that process? And if you could do that by going through this Green New Deal, then you should do that. Because people can associate that Green New Deal with making their power bill go away. Like, that's just good politics. His point is, look, we're going to be running these energy markets to some degree. And after a certain time, when the money is made back, you can have it.
Yeah.
What Democrat would ever do that? Think about that. This is fucking phenomenal. You should do that. That's good policy. Now, you need to sell that, making the point that the Green New Deal is giving you free power. The Green New Deal is giving you free power. We're going to fix climate change, and you're getting free power. You're dealing with the material needs of the various people. Collect $2.3 trillion in new income tax revenue from the 20 million new jobs. Meaning, I'm going to create 20 million new jobs. And in the process of creating 20 million new jobs, those people are going to be paying taxes. And those taxes is revenue that is going to be coming into us. Raise $2 trillion by making large corporations pay their fair share of taxes, effectively increasing the tax rate. Medicare for all. According to a February 15, 2020 study by epidemiologists at Yale University, the Medicare for All bill that Bernie Sanders wrote would save $450 billion in healthcare costs and prevent 68,000 unnecessary deaths each year. Over the next 10 years, national health expenditures are projected to total $52 trillion if we keep our current dysfunctional system. How much will we save switching to Medicare for All? According to the Yale study and others, Medicare for All will save approximately $5 trillion over the same time period. 52 trillion minus 5 trillion equals $47 trillion total. Meaning, Medicare for All is cheaper than keeping the current system. That's the point. How do we pay for it? Current federal, state, and local government spending over the next 10 years is projected to be $30 trillion. The revenue options Bernie has proposed total $17.5 trillion. Since 2016, Bernie Sanders has proposed a menu of financing options that will more than pay for Medicare for All legislation he has produced, according to the Yale study.
Can we put this on the screen?
Yeah. So this is not Bernie Sanders talking. This is Yale studying the Medicare for All bill and coming to this conclusion.
And all of this is here on his website.
He put all of this on the website. In fact, I'll link to this
in the description box.
In the description box. How do you pay for it, Sanders? And this is him effectively explaining how.
Oh, just real quick, because I'm going to have to run. I got to get some more work done.
Okay, what the hell is going on?
I had a question.
Something is... My system is... There we are.
Okay, well, I had a question to read out. While you do that.
Go for it.
It doesn't need a lot of response, but one of the other Patreon topics that we... Oh, no, that's not what I wanted to read out loud. So the last super chat that we got was talking about a state of emergency.
Yeah.
So just like within the last hour, San Francisco Mayor London Breed has declared a state of emergency for the city amid concerns over the international coronavirus outbreak. While no coronavirus cases have been confirmed in San Francisco, the global picture is changing rapidly and we need to step up preparedness, is what Breed said in a statement.
Slightly hysterical, right? I mean, that's slightly hyperbolic. I mean,
we see the virus spreading in new parts of the world every day, and we're taking the necessary steps to protect San Franciscans from harm.
I understand that, but there's not. She says... We don't have any cases yet, but we're going to go on massive alert.
We ready.
Red alert, red alert. That's a little extreme.
A little premature, but,
I mean, Jesus Christ. Like, I was like, oh wow, California, South Carolina, San Francisco has a coronavirus outbreak.
No,
and it's like,
not
nope,
not a one.
not one, not one. But you've seen the stock market yesterday dropped 1,000. Today,
yeah,
last I saw it was like 700-800. Look, the stock market is overblown in general. Don't know if you knew that. They were using a lot of loans and everything else to just prop up stocks, meaning inflating the value of those stocks. So fall off. I mean, media is not going to say that. But what is true is that we're an integrated community at this point. What happens to one happens to all of us. Something that is taking place in China, especially if it's slowing down the markets. Keep in mind, China supplies a lot of the world's materials. Like the things that you buy, the things that you use, a lot of that stuff is coming out of China. And the moment that China comes to a halt, that means supply lines also get adversely affected. So it's not just singular to China. Also, there's fears that it's worse than what people are saying it is. Meaning the CDC has come out making certain proclamations about the U.S. needing to be prepared. Clearly, it's not just isolated to China at this point. I saw certain European countries have their issues. And, Europe has free movement of people as a byproduct of their kind of being part of the European Union. Well, in this very specific case, the free movement of people creates a problem if those people have coronavirus and they're moving from pillar to post in Europe. So I don't necessarily know what Europe is going to do about the free movement. They may actually come to a halt for a bit. But look, I don't know how this is going to adversely affect the U.S. I don't know how severe this is going to be, but it is definitely affecting China. And like I said, you can look at the stock market and see how those people are freaking out with the notion of supply lines.
Yeah. So. All right, real quick. Vortex says, I'm concerned about Bernie and that he needs to ramp up his protection. Folks who have gone to his events have communicated a general lack of security for Bernie. Do you want to say something about that real quick before I head out?
So people jumped on stage.
Didn't somebody naked? Oh, wait, real quick. Alfred on the San Francisco thing says, problem is San Francisco is super compact and it's filled with gross shit. So we're effed if it hits here. That's fair.
We all know about promo.
That's funny. That's fair. It's like we got enough gross, nasty shit going on. Let's try to deter them.
Yeah, let's try to avoid that. Yeah. That's funny. That's funny. I was looking for video
about the naked person jumping on stage.
Yeah, I mean, because look, I worry about him too over stuff like that. Like, because ultimately you had a random naked woman jump on stage. I think it was something about animals or eating meat or something like that, like vegetarianism. And it's like,
where's security?
Where's security? I mean, like, and not just where's security. Do you honestly believe this is going to benefit your cause? Like, who do you believe is going to hear you screeching like a banshee talking about stop eating meat? And that's going to be the thing that, I was totally a meat eater until I saw this woman jump on stage topless at Bernie Sanders rally. That totally changed me. That's not going to change anybody. If anything, it's going to make them dislike you as a person.
You'd be like, those fucking vegetarians.
Fucking vegetarians.
I'm going to eat a pork chop.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's one of those things where I don't necessarily think it benefits you. And I've said it before. I am against. Look, all things being equal, if the person is not a Nazi, let the person speak their piece. And even with a loose interpretation of Nazi at that. Because, a strict interpretation of Nazi at that. I don't like this notion of people influencing political campaigns like this by jumping on stage and stopping the people from talking. Now, the reason is because you have this clown car where it could be everybody being stopped. Like, you can have a situation where it just goes as normal course of action that you interfere with your other people's campaign. You shouldn't do that. That's some fucked up politics. Let people make their case. Let people make their argument at their political rallies. I don't like this notion of trying to interfere with these. They have town halls. They call on all sorts of people. He literally deals with the audience in many of these places. He gives you your piece. Like, that woman could have made her piece. Hell, she could have even got naked with the question. And asked her question. She didn't have to jump on stage. She would have made just as much.
Your sound effects.
Well, she would have made just as much as an appearance and a thing if she would have did that. Miss, okay, what would you like to say? Well, Bernie Sanders. Tits out.
What kind of clothes?
Tits out.
All right. I got a super chat and I'm gone.
I have some ass out chaps like that where you just go.
No, you don't. Louise Brooks says, I know an infectious disease doctor who says corona is nowhere near as bad as the flu.
Fair enough. I mean, I don't, like, it's hard to know how bad it is and how much of this is politics with them hitting China. And so I was always unclear. I mean, it seemed like they are, you know, they're calling it an outbreak. But again, media has an incentive to manufacture reality in a way that makes it that much more dramatic than maybe what it actually is.
Gaff29 says, there are 4 topless girls throwing paint on themselves, protesting the treatment of dairy cows. One was chasing after Bernie.
Here we are. All right.
Y'all don't have anything fucking better to do. Like,
you used to be a vegetarian, babe.
I never would have done any shit like that.
Stop propping up the dairy industry and to stop
Look at the one in the background. Look at the background.
I don't understand this. This was poor planning. You didn't need to be topless, first of all. And then second of all, you should have already had the blood on you before. Like, you didn't even get any blood. This wasn't even a good interruption.
I guess the question is, what are you trying to accomplish with this? Like, isn't that the question? I mean, if you're going to have a protest, shouldn't the protest have an actual point and have a stated objective?
They're trying to raise awareness of treatment of dairy cows.
But that's not what happened there.
I didn't even know what they were doing until somebody.
That's not what happened. Are you telling me that at a town hall, if she wasn't just standing back there, an announcer comes to her and say, "Hey, miss, what do you like to talk about?"
But there's
and
no
she
Karen.
go tits out and say, "I want to talk about the treatment of dairy cows." That wouldn't have gotten also a huge amount of publicity.
I guess I'm saying that was poor execution. I agree with you. It was very poor planning.
Also,
first of all, I don't know how that bitch was allowed to get on the stage near Bernie Sanders.
And that's the other catch.
I know that's what we're talking about here.
What the fuck is security doing?
Like that first chick with her clothes on, she was able to walk up and straight
and just steal the mic from Sanders.
She got to touch Bernie Sanders.
Stole the mic from Sanders.
That's shenanigans, fuckery.
Sanders tried to take the mic. He was like,
and
right,
he's
fuck
like,
it.
"Get this bitch."
Yeah, he's like, "Fuck it."
I'll say it because he can't.
But where's the
Get
security?
this
bitch. Look at this. Why does it take all that time for security to get up there to get that woman off the stage? Where's the security? It's 20 seconds. Not only was she allowed to get on stage and rip the mic out of Sanders' hand, any of it. She could have had a knife.
4,
she could have had a weapon.
6, 7,
she could have injured him.
9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14.
And just because their tits out don't mean they're dangerous. They're not dangerous.
Grab her. That could have been acid that she had in that little carton.
Like, his security. I don't understand the security stuff. That's not sexy. I'm just saying that's not sexy.
Oh, gosh.
That's not sexy at all.
Where are your parents, Jennifer? You know.
She's a naked woman chasing Sanders? She was chasing Sanders.
Slap that.
Thank God security jumped in. 30 seconds later. What the fuck? He needs to prosecute. He needs to press charges. I press charges.
Right. Somebody said, what do we put?
You gotta press charges, man. Put their ass in prison. Let them sit in ice for a while.
Yeah, and Trudy was like, how do they even get in with that?
How do you get on stage?
Like, how do they get in with whatever that was in the
tits?
carton? No, they just brought their tits in.
Oh, that was just milk.
Their breasts
That might have just been
brought
milk.
in naturally. But it was red, so how did it get to be
Might
red?
have just been milk. Food coloring. Food coloring and milk.
I haven't been to a Bernie Sanders rally. Can you bring cartons of milk in?
I would imagine you can bring food in. I think the issue, I mean, look, they're going to bring their tits in. You can't stop them from doing that. It would be weird if you even tried. And getting on stage is the part that bothers me more than anything else. It's the being able to just walk up, grab the mic, and it's like, what is security doing while Bernie Sanders is struggling with this woman for the mic
to get up there?
And he eventually just walks off saying, she could have injured him in any of that time. Like,
she could have put.
When Galloway says, be careful, and he's freaking out, like, he is potentially going to be president of the United States. Real terms. The one who's going to get the most pledged delegates will be Sanders. Secret Service should be around him right now.
When did they start giving him protection?
This lax, loafing, lazy-ass security team. Pay them more money, Sanders. They formed a union. Make them earn that shit. But that's horrendous. That shouldn't happen.
Gaff29 says Bloomberg paid them to give Bernie a heart attack. Now, I'm going to say this because you took it there. You know, Dick Van Dyke.
Yeah. Back Sanders.
And his video is adorable if you haven't watched it.
Marianne
when
Williamson
he's talking
also.
about how he's like 10 years older than Bernie or something.
Yeah.
And he's talking about how, you know, the older people, he's having a hard time getting the older vote, and I don't understand. I'm older than him, and I got all my marbles. It was adorable. But this bitch could have knocked Bernie Sanders down, okay? He's not 20, all right? I don't know if he's on some kind of...
He's pretty powerful, though.
I know, and I know he plays basketball. He does all this running and everything else, but she could have knocked him down off the stage,
He's
into
from New
the
York,
podium.
though. I don't think he would have taken that shit lying down. I get the feeling. I get the feeling.
I just don't like the fact that she was able to get up there in a full 20 seconds. Who knows what she could have pulled out of her tit and slapped, you know,
I mean, she
assaulted him with underneath her breast.
That could have been a fake titty.
She could have pulled out the wiring in her bra and like stabbed him in the neck.
A fake titty where she pulled out a weapon from that titty.
Could you stop saying titty? Is there not a better word?
What, fake breasts?
You guys are cursing so much about this that I'm having to approve all your fucking messages. So there's
like this is utterly astonishing. We don't know if there was a false breast. We don't know that.
A false breast?
Where, like, it was something there that they wasn't real. Like maybe, and I hate to say this, but let's say they had small breasts, but they were using a stunt breast on top of the small breasts to withhold a weapon that they could pull away in order to assault Sanders. I guess I'm saying we can't take the chance. Yes, I might be paranoid, but I don't know if those tits are real. And the fact of the matter is, the security shouldn't have taken the chance. The security shouldn't.
They're gonna take this video down. They're gonna like say, Mr. Thomas, the word tit was said 42 times within a 3-minute section, and this is not suitable for advertisement.
They should not be allowed to get on stage like that, and you shouldn't just take as a general assumption that
what
those
if it was
breasts
a
are
dude?
real.
Now, are they being like charged for like indecent exposure or sexual assault? Because if it was a dude that ran up on stage with his genitalia out flinging around and it was a female candidate,
that's a good point.
They would be charging his ass.
Good point.
If there was a dude that streaked across and went towards a
Elizabeth
female
Warren,
candidate, oh shit.
his dick at Warren, yeah. I don't think that would have went over well at all. He would have been prosecuted.
Right, exactly. So what? Where's Becky and Jenny? Are they going to jail? Fine, something. What happened to these that charged Bernie Sanders
is a
and tried to sexually assault the future president of the United States of America?
Pretty much. You saw her chasing him. Just gonna put her tits on him. Just saying, man.
Ben Riley says hashtag fake titties. Kilo 19 says freaking machine guns in her titties. I don't.
We can't take the chance. I'm just saying we can't take the chance. That's all I'm just arguing with everything that's going on. Bloomberg has a ton of money, and she has a small frame.
I didn't even think about the fact that
she has
they
a
could
small
have been
frame.
Planted.
She could have been planted, and they might have had something where he paid her family a lot of money to do this. She, just plop went off.
Okay, so just an FYI, because I'm having to moderate, it's not that I'm blocking you. If you're putting the word titties or dick or penis or shit or any other type of profanity, Google is not going to let it come through. So I have to go in and manually give you permission to say titties. So it's not that I'm blocking you.
Right.
It's that YouTube doesn't want you to say stuff like that.
All right, I'm going to end it on that. Fake titties. Hashtag fake titties. Let's end it on that. Guys, I appreciate you guys showing up. I think I'm going to try to cover the debate tonight. I need to find a location that's going to house it. That usually is good. So feel free to join us.
These 4 walls. You're not going out tonight, are you?
No. I have food upstairs. I stopped by the deli.
You said you were going to find somewhere that was hosting the debate.
Oh,
you
yeah,
meant
on
digitally.
Here. Digitally, yeah.
Okay.
That's online. And we can cover it. Also, there's a Sanders rally that's going to be in Leesburg on Saturday. I think I'm going to try to go to that one. I haven't been to one for maybe 4 years. The last one, fucking phenomenal. I don't necessarily want to miss the one that's nearby. So I'm going to try to go to one in Leesburg. There's one in Richmond. I tried to get my boss to send me to the one in Richmond, but he won't. He was like, we're Color Super Tuesday. And I was like, fuck. I was like, all right, well, I'm going to one in Leesburg on my own power.
And then Saturday. Hey, wouldn't it be cool if you guys came out to that and saw
Leesburg.
Jamal? Is that this Saturday?
This Saturday. Yeah.
What time is that? Do you know?
I have no idea. We just found about it today. So
get some information on that. Jamal's gonna probably
most likely be the one in Leesburg.
We'll know for sure as it gets closer.
But we're definitely going to be covering the one in Super Tuesday. Also, the Assange trial is going on right now. The defense has been putting on its case, essentially pushing back on the U.S. argument that Assange was pushing out information in order and got agents killed. There's plenty of evidence that Assange worked with intelligence services to try to scrub that data, meaning he wasn't just willfully putting that information out. The claims that the U.S. government is using is somewhat ludicrous, to be honest. The guy's a publisher, and they're trying to get him for this notion of espionage and all this other stuff. Whether reporters in the United States realize it or not, Chuck Todd will be safe because Chuck Todd is not going to say anything that goes beyond certain bounds. But anybody who's a real journalist or anybody who's working to the benefit of trying to get actual news and everything else, and you want to know what goes on behind the scenes, you are on notice. You are on notice. The case of Julian Assange, the defense has even made the point that there was talk about trying to kill Assange and try to make it look like an accident. The Spanish company that was spying on Julian Assange was effectively spying on him 24/7. And apparently there was talk about having him, quote unquote, accidentally assassinated. It is unclear if this is going to be a fair trial, and most likely, probably not. After all, they kept him longer than the 50-week term that he was supposed to be staying there. And effectively, he's a literal, in real terms, political prisoner. The United States wants to get their hands on him and prosecute him. Chelsea Manning is in prison right now being tortured for the sole reason of trying to get her to roll over on Assange. The case that the U.S. government is making is massively just weak. There is a ruling that goes that between the United States and the UK that people won't necessarily be passed for political reasons. I don't necessarily know how this squares with that ruling. Meaning, in real terms, they're trying to get Assange for political reasons. And the U.S. government is making the ludicrous argument that the First Amendment doesn't extend its protections to Julian Assange. However, other laws in the United States does. This means that anybody in anywhere in the world is subject to be grabbed by the United States. Think about what that means. That means everybody on the planet is effectively fair game to be used or under U.S. law without being under U.S. protections. It is a ludicrous argument to make. And yet, reality doesn't matter. Power in this case is what matters. And whether or not Julian Assange is going to get a fair trial or not, it's Britain. Britain is obsequious to the United States. It's our client state. And so, it doesn't look good. Let's just say it that way. Not because the case isn't strong. Julian Assange's legal team can put on a strong case making the point that what you're saying here is not true. But that's not really the issue. Julian Assange went as a political prisoner for asylum in Ecuador because they understood that the United States was trying to snatch him. He was right about all of it. There were secret prosecutorial prosecutions hiding behind the case of him that got him there, essentially Sweden saying, or one of those other countries saying he had raped somebody. And then when they tried to drop the charges and the UK essentially tried to keep the charges up to give this fig leaf for him being in all of this stuff was essentially political actors trying to find ways to get their hands on Assange because they didn't like the fact that he was publishing factually true information about what our government and other governments around the world were doing. You have a philosophical responsibility to be in charge of your government, meaning your population. How can you be in charge of a government if most of the budget is black and you have no idea what that government is doing? The people it is murdering and killing in your name. What Assange is doing is vitally, vitally important. And this trial, I mean, keep in mind, whether Julian Assange is extradited or not, he has spent 7 years in a fucking embassy, which is all intents and purposes a jail cell. So, you know, the penalty has already, to some degree, been carved in him. But now we have this thing on whether or not he is going to be extradited and whether or not justice is just going to be that much more bastardized. So, I'll leave it here. Like, share, subscribe. Oh, what about this? What is this? Kelly Hudson. Thank you, Kelly Hudson. I appreciate it. Canada, I think.
She didn't leave a comment, but she did give a super chat. I was looking for the information for the rally on Saturday. I can't find it, so
we'll find it.
You can give that as it gets closer.
Guys, thank you for joining us. We had over 400 and something people here today.
We hit over 500.
Did we?
We did hit over 500.
That is a massive number. We've been getting really good numbers on these shows. Guys,
trying to see 1,000.
We want to see 1,000. So I've made it up to 800 and something. That was my highest.
Was I? Oh, I must not have been here.
No, you weren't here for that one. That was like 800 or something. But these shows are getting that much more viewership. In fact, these shows get more than Political Misfits.
I think part of it too, Political Misfits is in the middle of the day, so people are working.
That might be it. But Political Misfits is from 12 to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard. It's an amazing show. Myself and Iron Man, the Indomitable
Bob Schlayhuber,
Unflappable Bob Schlayhuber. Bob, white guy, working as a producer for By Any Means Necessary. Now, there is no blacker saying than By Any Means Necessary with Malcolm X saying, we're going to do this by... We don't give a shit what else. This has to take place.
What about Black Power?
By Any Means Necessary seems just more badass for some reason.
Oh, okay.
Like, because think about what it means. It means this mission has to be accomplished. And everything else is subordinate to accomplishing that mission. And he's making this argument in the sense of, like, civil rights, equal rights. If we're equal rights, then, you know, show it. Now, James Baldwin used to make this argument that I used to fucking love. He was like, this notion that this country wasn't integrated. We were integrated the moment we were brought over in ships, meaning we were interacting with one another. You know, you cutting this language as if this interaction wasn't taking place is nonsense. You were just raping and pillaging and using us for labor. Let's be honest about what it is. But we are interacting. Took care of your fucking kids. Keep it in perspective. So, I mean, but some of those arguments these guys
okay, so outside of that law, make sure that if you do not get the notification, you still tune in weekdays, 12 to 2 p.m. here on YouTube.
Yes.
Or on Radio Sputnik 105.5 FM if you are in the D.C., Maryland, Virginia area.
And feel free to call in. We enjoy our call-ins.
202-5 blah blah 132
202-521-1320, I think. But we'll repeat the number on the
You'll
show.
See
but
it then, but
12 to 2, join us. Thanks, guys. I really do appreciate you guys joining us for Contributor Appreciation. I may be running the debate, so if you see me tonight, don't be surprised.
Give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Make sure that you're subscribing. Hit the notification icon.
Like, share, subscribe.